Hi, everybody. I wrote a bull on the front on Saturday morning. Glad that
Okay,
everybody's okay.
all right.
That's lucky. That's
Yes.
good. Could have been bad.
Well, we'll go ahead and get the engineering committee for, June 9th started. So first item will be, any comments, public comment on items not on the agenda. And press star 9,
Or raise your hand.
or raise your hand.
Yeah, and Jim Popper is,
Yeah.
okay?
Hello, Jim Hoffler here. Can you hear me okay?
Sir.
Okay. So I had some comments on the April 2020 Geotechnical and Engineering Hydraulics Report from NV5. And before I start, I want to say these are just comments, right? I don't really expect anybody to answer these comments today. But I thought I'd tee them up because these are sort of the typical clarifications that are sometimes needed on projects of this sort of complexity. And I would like to say that if there's other members of the public on the call and so forth, these are not intended to impugn NV5 in any way. They did a very thorough job. It's just there are some things that I think NID could benefit from getting clarified. So item 1, the hydrology and scour analyses appear to be based on a maximum stream flow of 200 cubic feet per second. That's quite a bit below the actual peak flows in Auburn Ravine in many years between October and April. I think that might be worth taking a look at. Item number 2, the proposed infiltration gallery involves importation of crushed rock, jagged, angular rock. That's not likely to be approved by state and federal fisheries agencies because if that crushed rock were to be released into the stream bed downstream during construction or during future operations, it could reduce spawning success in the stream sections downstream from Hemphill. Item number 3, the infiltration gallery is designed to extend 20 to 25 feet laterally under the stream bed. If it became clogged with sediment, that could put NID in a situation where there would be impaired water delivery because of sediment clogging up the ability to pump water. And then trying to get it cleaned out would be a complex process, possibly involving permits and definitely involving a lot of expense to clear out that sediment. Then item number 4, the calculations for the post-project average slope of the stream bed, in other words, after the facility, the dam itself is removed, seem to ignore the existence of bedrock shelves downstream from the Hemphill diversion structure. And that would change the calculation if that was taken into consideration. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it's not mentioned in the report. If anybody wants a text of what I just said, I can send it to you. Just let me know. And if you wanted to meet with me about that, that's okay too. The last item I wanted to mention is that our board of directors, Friends of Auburn Ravine, we sent an email to REM on May the 27th talking about our 5 key things that we're looking for regarding that particular situation at Hemphill. First of all, we're looking for something that can be acted upon quickly. 2, provides for upstream and downstream fish passage. 3, prevents juvenile entrainment. 4, does not cause collateral damage to other important aspects of the Auburn Ravine watershed. And 5, conforms to relevant regulatory standards. Now, also in that email that we sent, we mentioned an idea, and today I'm here to partially retract that idea. We mentioned the idea of a riffle and pool arrangement similar to what was done some years ago at the Lincoln Gauging Station. And as the referees say in NFL football, upon further review, we've decided to say we don't know if just the weir situation would work given the height of the existing sill and the height of the bank downstream. There might be a very high cost option to reinforce the banks to allow for a riffle and pool situation. But what we would like to tee up is an idea that Beth Lawson with Cal Fish and Wildlife has talked about previously, and also Robert Hain has talked about with Sarsis. By the way, Robert Hain asked me to mention his name today, that he supports this idea, which is basically creating a concrete side channel, probably on the golf course side of the creek, the south side of the creek, with a vault and a screen and a pump in order to get water into the Hemphill Canal. Such a design might also involve a good old-fashioned fish ladder, although it might be possible to do without that depending on the calculations as to the elevation and the slope and so forth. So I just want to let you know about those things. And one of the things that I was thinking about the other day that I thought I'd tee up, it might be a good idea, maybe this fall. By the way, as I make these comments, a lot of them are for the benefit of NID, not really for the fish. So it might be a good idea this fall when the water's low, early October, to rig up some pumps and some pipes and drain the pool above the Hemp Hill Dam so you could do a real good inspection of that structure, because it does get beat up pretty bad in the wintertime with big logs coming downstream. We've seen some like 3 feet in diameter, 12, 15 feet long. Property owners upstream cut these things down, and then the high water washes them down. They hit the Hemp Hill Dam. And, you know, during the irrigation season, if something was to come down and hit the dam, it probably wouldn't be moving that fast when it hit the dam. But in the rainy season, when you're talking about, you know, 600 or 1,000 CFS coming across that dam, those big heavy logs are moving pretty fast, and over the years may have caused some dangerous cracks in that structure. So it might be worth taking a look at. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you.
And on that note, I'd like to talk about the task group that was meeting on this project.
This is public comment.
Can't do
Or-
that?
No,
All right,
we can talk about that later.
all right.
Is there any other?
I'm not seeing anyone else raise their hand.
Okay.
Comment.
We want to, I guess, just talk about the item, about the closed session item.
That's that when we get there.
Can we get there?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 1, which is approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on May 12th, 2020. Does committee members have any comments on those? Okay. So we'll close item 1 and move on to item 2. Oh, I'm sorry, public, yeah.
I'm in my board packet, so I'm like, what, Mark?
I'll see if anybody's raised their hand, see how nice that is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, seeing none, so we'll close item number 1 and move on to item number 2, which is the Centennial Water Supply update. And this is the quarterly update that we do regarding this project and the status where we're at. Since the last quarterly update, there's been no activity. We've spent no consulting time. There's been, due to COVID, obviously has changed quite a few things. So there's no AB 52 consultations. We haven't engaged with the tribes at all since the January meeting we had with Nevada City Rancheria. We did update the website by updating the last quarterly State Water Board letter, which is the only thing that we did to the website. And quarterly update for the State Water Board, that'll go out at the end of this week, which is the next quarterly update that we have to submit to them, which is basically going to say that we haven't done any activity in this last quarter because of COVID.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Why did our consultants give us $32,451 back?
They didn't give us money back. So what happens is most of that work was done in December and November. They invoice in January. Originally, it gets put into the January costs with the idea that as accounting moves forward and makes their corrections back to the previous years, so that money was actually money spent in 2019. So it's been removed out of 2018 and put back into, or 2020 and put back into 2019.
And so in December, they spent $32,000. Do we know what they did in December, what work they did towards it?
So this was all part of the 45,000 that was shown in January, February, so that, most of that work is, related to task order number 12, which is for AECOM, related to, all the alternatives that we had talked before, related to Rollins. So that was work related to Rollins Reservoir alternatives, and then, some AB 52 consultation as well. So very, very small amount relatively to that. So most of that work was already done before January, and so there's roughly $7,800 that was invoiced in January and February from AECOM, final up the draft report, et cetera.
Are they pretty much finished with looking at the Rollins alternatives?
At this point, we don't have anything scheduled to move forward.
Is there going to be a report issued on that, or that's just for later?
So we do have reports that are available. Those were all gonna be part of the draft environmental document as part of the alternatives that come out,
So that's when the...
unless directed otherwise. That's how that would happen.
And what other alternatives are we looking at? I mean, we've talked about, you've got a suite of alternatives with them, but it'd be nice to share with the engineering committee, what are the alternatives? And I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's write them down. How many of them are there, and what are they? We don't need to know the details of it, but it'd be helpful to understand what we're looking at.
Sure. To do that?
Those have been stated in the past, it's basically raising Rollins in various ways, increasing storage capacity of Rollins.
among many.
And determining whether or not the existing structure can handle, such an increase, without completely tearing down the dam and rebuilding it.
But you keep saying among many other things. So
Yeah.
what are these?
Yeah,
So we'll bring you the list. I don't,
Give me a list.
That would be great.
Yeah, some of them, you know, obviously that we had looked at and determined, some of those came from our notices, and comments from the public. Some of them, fall away pretty quickly in terms of the,
Yeah.
but we want to do this.
the practicality
The
of it.
practicality of them, yeah, right, I mean,
Yeah, because I don't think it was until task order 12 that we started even looking at anything besides roller compacted or concrete or this alignment or that alignment. It was,
Yeah, no, from the very beginning, once we did the initial,
I didn't see it in the,
so a lot of those alternatives are being also worked on through HDR, which
HDR.
when developing the document for us, right? AECOM is used for portions of the alternatives analysis for technical
the engineering work.
discuss related to some of the raises and that type of thing.
thank you.
But we can do that.
That'd be great.
And so we spend roughly 13,000. I think some of that will also still be rectified into 20, looking at the detailed audit report. Probably another 4,000 or so that's probably gonna get put back into 2019.
And that all gets rectified during the audit.
Yeah,
Actually, it's before.
before the audit, but they
So
do their.
what happens is, when we close period 12 and we still have period 13 open, which is the collect, right? So any invoices for work that were done during the previous year is actually happening in period 13. We carry those invoices on the books in the current year. It is in April that finance then begins to roll back those charges back into 19 as we prepare for the audit, right? So these are the adjustments before we go to audit. So you'll see in your budget to actual, you'll see that there's a lot spent, and then all of a sudden, after the April true-up, all those numbers will come back down to normal, right? So the first quarter, you're watching the new quarter plus the close of the old quarter. So sometimes you can get a little wonky in there, and the reason we do it there is because first quarter money, you haven't reached your maximum value yet in terms of the accounts, and we have recovery time in quarters 2, 3, and 4. So that's why this is happening.
Yeah, and depending on when invoices come in, some consultants can submit stuff a little bit later, so sometimes you get them in January, February, even March for work done the previous year. So no, we try to get them to, right, and we try to get them to submit everything on a timely fashion. Sometimes they don't, or sometimes they miss something and then they come back to us after the fact, so.
I have a question about, so the 2019 budget was 1.775 million, and we only spent 136,000 of it. I know the lion's share of it went into the Tibet project.
Yep.
And some of it went into, so how much of that 1.5 million roughly is, still to be spent on this project?
We don't have 1.5 million.
I know, so part of it was spent at the hub, so is all of it then transferred out, is that?
Yeah, that was 2019.
100% of
But when the budget closes, any residual money flows back out of that project
Into reserve.
into reserve. What only flows into the capital projects renewal and replacement reserve.
Okay.
So it doesn't go into the general operating reserve, it goes into a very specific reserve.
Renewal and replacement reserve?
Yes.
This is a renewal or replacement project?
So
It's just where the money goes.
it's just where the money goes. So the capital money flows into that account.
Okay. Thank you.
So going down to the property for this year, you can see, we've expensed roughly 27,000 and, we received about 76,000 in revenue. So you're at a positive, almost $49,000 at this point for the properties. And so on the last line, down at the bottom, the 2019 and 2020, there was a request that we split out what was actually expensed for the project or paid for the project versus including that into the overall revenue and expenses from the property. So I've done that I went back to 2019 and then of course for 2020. So in 2019 we spent $136,000 in the project. The property revenue number was a net positive about $137,000. So it was almost the same, but you can see the 136 is what we spent specifically to the project, which is a comment that somebody had at the last meeting to spread those out. So that's what that's trying to show there. And then
And the property management is taken out of the
property revenue and expenses.
So it doesn't show it in expense.
Correct. Yep, it's sitting in that second line there. Yep.
So the property, expense is a net number.
Yeah. Yeah, the revenue expenses is the net. And I know it's a little confusing because in some parentheses mean minus and some
I
stuff
know
and
that.
positive. It's hard to, I haven't figured out a way to spell that out any easier yet, but, any questions? And at this point, we don't have any plans on the table or any consultation, et cetera, moving forward at this point,
So the AB 52 is.
So it's silent at the moment.
Up in the air.
Right, the COVID has completely stopped that. We're not even, reaching out to the tribes. Once this thing starts to clear up and we start to get back to a new normal, then we'll start to do that same thing whatever that is, whether that's every couple of months like we were before, we'll just send out an email just saying, hey, if you got any comments or questions or you want to get together, that kind of thing. So.
You've got a hand raised for Sid
Any
now?
questions? Okay. Go ahead, Sid.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, sometimes there's a delay. Thank you very much. Some of my questions have already been answered, but I would like additional clarification on the unexpended amounts for Centennial. And I believe I understood that what is unexpended by year goes into the reserve account for renewal and replacement reserves. Does that mean it goes out of the Centennial budget altogether and it then is available for anything that is needed?
That is correct.
Okay, and so therefore, as I look at, let's see, for this year, 2020, so far only 13,000 has been expended as was described. There has been income from the properties. And it's just confusing, and I'm just trying to track. The authority for this calendar year is $500,000.
Correct.
At this point, NID is perhaps proposing to not expend even the 500,000, as has been requested actually by many people, right? And so the remaining expenditures, I believe, and I just want clarification on this, there's authority for 500,000, and to the extent allowed by law, which would mean you have contracts, and of course you have to pay for material that's already been contracted for, but no additional expenditures are anticipated in this year. Is that correct?
Up to the budgeted limit, that's correct.
So there could be additional things besides what is legally required under your existing contracts.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on that. I appreciate it.
But we've issued no new contracts this year.
Right.
To date.
Okay,
So
okay,
the work that's been done, or for this year as well as some of the early in the previous year, is all encumbered money that was under contracts.
Correct.
Previous.
We have ongoing expenses. The AB 2 consultation is an ongoing expense, and so that 500,000 is there in part to cover the potential costs of that.
Correct.
That was one of the pieces.
Yes. So the majority of the 2020 ask was to support the tribes as we move through the AB 52 process.
okay. But it is I'm sorry, but it was given we've got months of not having actual expenditures, perhaps not as much is going to be needed. However, I understood Doug to say that also a portion of that is for ACOM, for alternatives analysis, for, I guess, reference was made to Rollins alternatives, and I presume that's for evaluating raising Rollins. So I'm curious if there's a breakdown of how much of that money was for consultation versus alternatives evaluation.
Of the 13,000 that we're talking about for this year,
Yeah,
so about $7,800 was for AECOM,
okay.
but that was
Okay.
actually encumbered in last year's budget. So it was
Okay.
already encumbered and rolled forward from the 2019 budget. There's been no new contract signed in 2020,
Right.
which would be what would go against this year's 500,000.
Okay, and then one final question, and I appreciate your clarity and response on this, but there's been confusion from my mind of what I'm reading. So in the chart where it says consulting, that's consulting plus consultation, and so that's a question. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, because we use our consultant, HDR and Ecor, who's a sub to them for the AB 52 consultations, it's included in the consulting cost because it is under a consulting contract.
Okay, that clarifies. I appreciate it. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you. We see any other
Anybody else?
No other news, right?
Okay, we'll go ahead and close item 2 and work to item 3, which is discussing a district-wide reservoir study to be developed by staff. And what I wanted to do for this item is, we've got some good data here in the last couple of years with regards to working in Combe, working in Loma Rica, as well as Newtown, and even to a certain extent Rawlins when we did that a couple of years ago. I think it's a good opportunity or good time for us to take a step back, look at all of our existing reservoirs, take a snapshot of where we're at, where the sediment problems are, how much of these reservoirs are filled in. Take a look at which one of these reservoirs may or may not be of benefit to us anymore in terms of operations. Those are typically the smaller ones, some of the on-stream ones for our canals, whether that could potentially be Newtown or whether that's Ore Creek or some of these smaller ones, which don't give us a whole lot of benefit operationally wise. So maybe we need to consider whether we remove these facilities, fill them in, hand them off to somebody else that may be interested. And then also look at some of our larger reservoir concerns, which is Rawlins and Combe especially, where we have the most sediment trouble, which is on the Bear River side. To take a look at how much we have in there, what it's going to cost us to try to remove that, to see if it makes sense for us to continue to budget $1 million here or $1 million there to try to do something with that, or to take that money and potentially look at ways that we can try to minimize that or reduce that, whether that's watershed work up above to try to minimize how much more sediment comes in, right? Whether it's putting up debris structures where we can come in and clean those out on a regular basis. Because when you start to look at the numbers, from Combe and from Loma Rica, the high ends and the low ends, even in the best of situations, the cost for us to remove this sediment is extremely high. Loma Rica, for example, we literally could pull it right out of Loma Rica and dump it on the airport site and spread it out. So there was very minimal cost and effort to do that. That was still roughly $10 an acre, or a cubic foot. 5,000 a cubic foot. Yeah, right. Oh, cubic yard, I'm sorry. Cubic yard. So if you try to remove, say in Rawlins, 5,000 acre feet, even at that low end of $10 a cubic yard, you're spending $80 to $90 million. So that's 16 to 17,000 acre foot. If it's higher than that, which it may be because of the location and the effort to haul it off, et cetera, now you could be talking even more, right? You could be up into the 30s to 40s, even to $50,000 an acre foot to remove that. And whether that's something that, so if it was $30 a cubic yard, removing 5,000 acre feet would be roughly $240 million, give or take. So I think the idea here is that let's look at what we have, where we're at on these things, all these reservoirs, identify ones we may or may not need, identify what may be the better course of action in moving forward to minimize additional sediment loading into our existing reservoirs that we do have to maintain and keep. And so the idea being is that we'll take some of this money that we currently have for roughly almost $800,000 in this year's sediment removal budget. The report will be done by staff, but we'll need some bathymetry work on some of the larger reservoirs. That'll need to be done by somebody else.
Yeah, I think there are a couple ways of looking at this problem. It'd be nice to develop a cost to actually restore original volumes and to look at a cost to actually keep a steady state in the reservoirs, so that we can halt sedimentation at the current level without trying to recover lost storage. And I know it's very expensive. This is a maintenance activity. It really has to come out of rates. We have certainly been told in the past in public forums that NID doesn't need new storage. We simply need to claw back the lost storage. And Caleb Dardick years ago put a figure on that. He said NID can recover 20,000 acre-feet by digging out the sediment. Maybe, I don't know what the number is and at what cost, and that's what the study needs to produce.
So those are things that we'll look at, right? What the costs are to remove them. But I think the bigger picture and the bigger goal here is to identify these areas of concern and how we want to address them moving forward, right? Budgeting $1 million a year may not make the most sense. Maybe it does for some of the smaller reservoirs, but maybe some of the other ones we need to shift gears and look at ways to try to reduce the sediment loading and move forward that way. And that may be money well spent versus just trying to remove material and have it fill back in again.
So you mentioned certain watershed activities, and I understand that. I see some issues with that. And one is that we don't control the upper watershed. On the Bear side, a lot of that sediment is coming out of old abandoned hydraulic mines, which we really don't have control of.
Right, but we could be working with BLM and the
Right.
Forest Service, who do own the majority of that property, and coming together and finding federal dollars that we could match to try to ease up or take some of the pressure off. Right?
I'm totally in favor of that, working with those other agencies. But I haven't seen over the years a lot of movement on the part of those agencies to correct a legacy problem.
No. Well, I mean, there's no. Yeah. There's exactly. So nobody's pushing them, right? I mean, on the Greenhorn side, we have 5 active mines, plus we have Hanson's aggregate mining activities. So clearly, there's some opportunity there to work not only with the state and the county, Regional Water Quality Board, and all those guys to say, hey, look, your stuff needs to stay up there. We're tired of digging it out.
I totally get that, and it's easy to talk about it, and you can throw a lot of words at this problem and have no actual impact on the problem.
Correct, right? But I think right now, where staff is the genesis point here, you guys, is coming out of the capital planning process. We've got $1 million slated for sediment removal, and we can just blindly go in and continue to dig out reservoirs. There's plenty of work to do that. But it is, again, blindly being done. We haven't really looked at, we haven't built a plan. And so we can wax poetic about the work we want to do, but we don't know what we need to do.
Which is my point.
Right. And so I think that Doug's discussion point here is to let the committee know that, to find out what you guys think about and what things you guys would be thinking about as we move through this process now and for the next engineering committee. What kind of information do we want? What kind of process do we want to go through the next 6 months, which is your tenure, and maybe more for your tenure, and how do we build that into the capital program so that $1 million in sediment is being used appropriately or most economically or most whatever it is. I mean, because we can say it doesn't have to be economic. We want it to be more environmental, or we want it to be more in line with some of our other operational controls, right? If we're saying, look, we want to hit those projects that are that we get the highest environmental benefit for, then these projects move over here and these projects move forward, right? So those are the things that we need to measure out. But right now, I will say, staff is blind to where is the impact. We can't sit here and say, here's a map, here's all 27 reservoirs. The ones that are in green, they're fine. We don't need to touch them. The ones that are in yellow, they're 50% full. The ones that are in red are over 50% of their capacity has been lost. These are the reservoirs. And then to be able to say, we've looked at them operationally, because one of them has come to the front, and that's Newtown Reservoir. we don't need this reservoir anymore. We can offer it to the neighbor who would like to have a lake or a pond and give them the necessary inches to maintain their facility, and we just continue on down the road. Or we fully abandon the facility and take it out. But those decisions are decisions that we have to start thinking about making.
And to prioritize those two, right? To get that list and then to prioritize.
I'm 100% in favor of getting out of our reaction and just, let's do this. I mean, we've got to have science and sound information to base our decisions on.
And I
particularly with
totally
these capital
agree
improvement
with
projects.
that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing against a study. I think this is essential information. I think it's information that would have been nice to have had long ago.
We did a partial.
We did a partial, but this is an ongoing issue, and we have to confront it. This is really sort of a maintenance thing, and the thrust in the past has been to shortchange maintenance, and organizations do that all the time. They don't invest in their plant, and their plant gets run down, and all they're really doing is expending their capital.
Right. Fort Creek is a perfect example. We've spent almost $500,000, and now we're thinking maybe we don't need it. It's just not prudent.
I think to that comment, though, it's reservoir capacity is an easy way for an organization to lean into its capital without anybody seeing and not putting maintenance dollars in the operation, right? We should, and just like we've just completed the work at Loma Rica, that work should have been ongoing on a schedule, right? Every 5 years we go in, we clean it out, we move, because I mean this is the front end reservoir, essentially the clear well before the Loma Rica treatment plant. Instead, we wait, and then it kind of gets ahead of us, and we take care of it. The point there is that we have 27 reservoirs in the system. Not all of them need annual care, but they need care, and we as an organization, and we're not any different than every other water agency in the state of California that has a reservoir. Everybody waits until the cattails are already overwhelming the banks or whatever it is, and then they go in, as opposed to just saying, we're on a schedule, we're going to get them all cleaned out, we're going to paint this bridge from one end to the other. And I think that right now we need to know the state
Snapshot
of where we're at, so that we can come into this room and say, your 2021 budget, I don't know that you'll be all the way there, but your 2021 budget, we've gone through the priorities with you guys. This is how we got to the red, green, and blue, whatever the color coding is. And this is how we recommend we prioritize, and this is how it would impact the budget.
Yeah, this is an item that's in the capital budget, I guess.
Correct.
I'm not sure. This isn't truly a maintenance item, and that the cost for doing this maintenance shouldn't come out of rates.
Well, that's something that you can talk about when we get to that place, right? To say
because, rates should pay, straight out maintenance of the system, I would think.
It does. This has not been in that category. I would remind you that we didn't have a sediment line in the capital program until year before last.
Nor did we deal with the maintenance operations all that much. We just haven't dealt with it.
Ever. We did not, ever.
But there's maintenance, and then it starts to become environmental, right? And everything becomes more difficult instead of doing maintenance.
I see. All of a sudden, the tri-colored blackbird moves in, and now we have a problem.
Or the black rail, or whatever it is, right? I mean, so where we were at a few years ago was, we needed to get a maintenance activity going so that we could get through the CEQA process, and that we would be in annual maintenance, right?
Like we could do a programmatic document if we had this technical information.
Got it.
Understand it.
Yes.
And then we could prioritize and understand exactly, be doing it with actual real purpose.
Right.
Got it.
And this is priority number one, and this is number two.
I'm totally in favor of studying this and getting this data.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And just a quick question, oh, are you done?
I'm just echoing your desire for data and science.
Thank you. So you're saying that staff, and Rem has told me many times that not, our upper watershed reservoirs are, they're granitic, there's.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of issues
problem
up there, right?
So those should go pretty fast, and
Yep.
staff is gonna do
Yep.
all of the initial looking at it.
Mhm.
So really, we're talking mostly of Rollins and Combi and some of these diversions.
Dutch Flats, 4-bay,
Flat.
I mean, the Dutch Flat after bay is full, Combi is full. Rollins has the 2 arms, they're very different in terms of their sediment.
Most recently.
Deer Creek's a little bit, but not so
There's
much.
a half a dozen, there's a handful that.
Yeah, then our smaller ones.
And then the 17 smaller ones.
Smaller ones, which we
Those
go out,
are really messed up.
those we can survey and do.
That's why it's not bad.
Right, we don't have to hire a consultant to do those.
Yeah.
The bigger ones we would.
So have you,
So there's not a lot of stuff from the hydraulic, it's.
Sorry, we're at- I apologize, Laura.
so have you done a back of the envelope estimate of how much this?
No, so we
work
just
would
wanted to have a
cost?
discussion that it seemed like a good thing to, so now we'll move forward, we'll get to some costs related to the bathymetry work on some of the bigger reservoirs, and then we can come back and say, look, this is the cost that we're seeing. And then we are hopeful and that we're well within the number that we have currently in this programmatic number.
Yeah, you better,
There's some amazing tools out there now to do
There is.
bathymetry.
Yeah.
They've really advanced that whole
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
So it's really just, the group that did, Combi also does that work, or has sub that do that work. So we'll reach out to some of them to get an RP and estimate, to figure out what it's gonna cost.
It seems like there should be plenty
It
enough
should be.
budget to.
I would think it will
to
be.
do this.
Yeah.
Everything else is gonna be internal.
How about the timeframe? I mean, what kind of, are you thinking, you were mentioned by 2021 budget time, but that means it's summer, and so.
Well,
I'm gonna do this.
yeah. I think the thing is that you guys will be,
I don't know.
yeah. You'll be a long way down the road, I think, by the time that you're solidifying the budget, right? Yes, starting right now, you're starting to build the CIP that we're gonna talk about today. June and July, or July and August, you're gonna be putting down some numbers. But I think it's really important for, clearly our conversation was, I think it's really important for this committee to understand that we're making this first foray into this new thought process, into this new tactic, which is a more traditional tactic. And that as we're moving through that, when we get to October and you guys are setting the full budget for 21, this committee has weighed that thought process and you're aware, okay, we're moving this one forward. PRVs, that's fine, that's just a one-off, and get them done. And that there are other opportunities for us as we're going. But it was important that we flush this idea out with the committee so that we can warn you as we're gonna, your next thing you're gonna see is a consultant agreement coming in, you're gonna see a scope of work, we're gonna be looking for a recommendation, and to not get caught off guard when we're coming to the sediment projects line in the capital plan in your budget and saying, hey, we want some of that money. We're not gonna dig dirt with it, we're gonna go out and do this consulting. So we wanted to make sure that you guys were groovy with the idea so that we can move forward. Okay,
I think it'll save us a lot of money in the long run.
it always does.
And it gives us a plan and a basis for how we move forward in the future, right? That
It answers,
then the board can make their decisions in a much more informed
Yeah.
fashion.
you can answer the why, right? We struggle with the why.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Sid, yeah, Sid.
Hey, good morning again. So a number of things, and I too am in favor of this look. I welcome, encourage, and applaud looking at a more holistic approach. And Doug, I was very happy to hear you talk about the watershed connections as well. But I do have some questions. And I also want to suggest that in the strategic plan, that this also be referred to, because I think, again, if I understand right, these issues have been dealt with in 2 different ways. 1, maintenance, and 2, perhaps grants. Combi, for example. And I'm a little bit concerned about the potential for, and maybe there is no potential for this, for taking money that perhaps has been identified or earmarked, connected to grants for sediment removal, or is this a whole new approach? That's a question.
So I think I think the answer is this is a whole new approach for us as we move forward in determining what we have today and what we need to do to move forward. That will give us the opportunity to look for future grant options once we have our plan developed on how we want to move forward. Is that what your question was?
Yeah, that's my question, because, you know, I've been following the Combi issue and sediment treatment and the costs and the unexpected costs and the original hoped for added value for gold extraction versus toxic removal, blah, 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 blah. So I do want to note, go ahead.
I was just going to say we're not impacting or suggesting that we take money from that grant to move forward with this. So
Well, that grant's done.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It wasn't a grant, it was a contract.
A contract, sorry.
Okay, excuse me. I thought it was a grant. And then just a comment. You referred to something like $10 a cubic yard for the very cheap, very easily dealt with Loma Rica issue. And that's kind of that's a very old standard figure that is often used of just what it costs to transport a cubic yard of material for any reason, any place, right?
No,
No, that was actual contract work. So the last 2 years, we've been removing sediment from Loma Rica. The cost to remove it on the bid item was $7.50 a cubic yard. Then when you add all the other pieces onto it, it comes out to roughly about $10 a cubic yard.
Okay. That
So
just
it's
sounded,
specific contract work that we've done in the last couple of years.
but it's an aberration, Sid, because we just pulled it out of the reservoir. It may have traveled 100 feet, and we windrowed it and dumped it at the airport.
Yeah.
So it's not representative of a true field cost.
right, I understand that, yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
Combi, which was a much different number, right?
Yeah.
The dry, and then the dry versus the wet. So the dredging was a very expensive proposition
Right.
versus in the dry, but even that was still considerably more than what we had for Loma Rica.
Okay. Well, I would also encourage that, and you had alluded to this, that as you go through the holistic evaluation and determination of the sediment and the condition of all the reservoirs, that you make sure to include the environmental benefit of either maintenance or non-maintenance, rather than only the bottom line, the dollar aspect. I just watched this morning a very inspirational video of the returning of the summer steelhead up in Washington after the Elwha Dam removal. So, you know, personally, this isn't a diversion, so to speak here, but I love the idea of non-needed, non-functional reservoirs, either to consider the removal of the dam or the evolution to a meadow, which most lakes eventually want to do if they're not managed for water supply. So
Okay.
there.
Great. Thank you. Is there any other?
No.
Okay. No other comments? Then we'll close item 3 and move on to item 4, which is the CIP, the draft CIP. And today it's really a review and more of a discussion, like Rim had talked about earlier. What you see in front of you is basically the document that has been developed previously. I've made some adjustments to it based on some prioritizations. I've looked at it a little differently in terms of the programmatic components. Before, we've been more programmatic in terms of a number. Pipeline replacement, 1.2 million. Sediment removal, those numbers. The difficulty is when you start to get projects that are exceeding of that number and how you deal with them. So I started to look at, when I look at a project that's a high priority within treated water pipelines, I may need to make my programmatic number higher this year versus next year. So it's not just a blanket number that we try to fit everything under. We need to work it so that we can build the projects that we need to build. Otherwise, partly what happens is we have a number that we can't reach. It makes the project get pushed off to the side or get delayed while we wait until the following year and go down to another one, which needs to be done but is a lower priority. And that's, my thought is that's not how we should be doing it, right? We need to be developing these projects that are based on our priorities, that are given to us from all of our operations departments, ops, maintenance, hydro, rec. Those are what we're trying to do, and that's how we're trying to move forward with it. Also, when we start to move forward with the budget stuff in July and August, we're gonna have more detailed information for all the projects, at least for the ones that we're proposing in the 21 budget, so that the board members can take a look at that and see, you know, instead of it just saying relocate pipeline from back of houses, you have a better idea what that actually entails and why we're doing it, and why this needs to be done next year versus being pushed off to the following year. So, we're not there yet. This document obviously doesn't have that information, but when we move forward into July and August and start to do that work, we'll have that information available so that you can make a better determination when we say we need $8 million, we need $10 million in the CIP that year to be able to build these projects, and this is why we're doing them. So, I just want to give you a little caveat as to the document itself before we kind of go through these if you have some questions
I have
specifically.
just a general question, because last year there was already numbers on here, and this is what it is, and here you go, you're gonna accept this. And so this is very different, and I appreciate that. That's good that we have actually talking about the need for some of these projects. So currently, just to clarify, how historically, so you said, you just picked a number saying this is the budget for this type of work, and so it's really a squeak, whoever has the best budget or says they can do the project for the most current amount. How last year and previous years did you get those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers? Just a process overview of what, you know, how it came about.
It was that,
meeting.
so yeah, the department heads all met, so the operational units met with Gary, and they prioritized the...
Collectively or independently?
Collectively. And so they prioritized the lists. It was then, from there, we created a burn rate, which is the number in the programmatics. So the programmatics, we knew that the amount of engineering staff that we have downstairs and these types of projects, we can get through roughly $1 million worth of that work in a year. And so that's how we ran it. And the priority, like all the years before, was top one is number one, and we work our way down. We were able to get 90+% of the capital dollars on the ground, but it did mean, like Doug is talking about, is that sometimes the larger projects that we ran into kind of stumbled because they're not within the 1-year programmatic window. They actually need 2 and 3 or 4 years, and so we move those down to the non-programmatic projects. So that's why you see specific projects later on in the budget. And really, what Gary was doing was he was running a program, the programmatic, based on the amount of money that he had available and was hitting as many of the projects in priority that he could. That's one way to do it, and he was effective in getting a lot of pipe in the ground. But there is, I will acknowledge that there is an amount of overuse or underuse of financial resources inside that space. Doug is more on a traditional track here, where we're gonna programize a 5-year plan, and we're gonna have money that's sitting in these projects, and we're gonna know where they're going. We're gonna keep my recommendation is to keep the programmatic concept in that the money doesn't sit in the project, it sits in the program. That way the projects can feed off of that money as opposed to having to come to the board and saying, well, I need to move 10,000 from this project to that project, right? Because that causes a shell game that's hard for the board to see. So it's much easier for the board to watch, this is your programmatic, this is the account level amount of money that you're spending, these are the projects you're working on, this committee's watching those projects, and we can see, you know, on your warrants, you can see which projects are burning and at what rate. So there's appropriate controls around, am I going to get to the right number, am I not? But right now, what Doug needs to do is walk with you guys through his process, his thought process, because this document is key to your work in July and August. And so he's going to walk you through his thought process and then tell you about the documents that you'll have available to you as we go through that process. Did that answer the question, Laura?
It did, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah. So some of the projects that needed to be done, because, I mean, we hear from Chip and from, Jackie, there's projects that really, they keep Chip awake at night. I mean, he's concerned about them. And it seems like all the projects we're doing are new projects instead of maintenance type or, upgrading existing facility type things. It's a lot of, new shiny pipe in the ground and, things we were past.
I think that's not necessarily, I mean, I understand your point, and I mean that BEP has gotten a lot of that light, but when you look at the totality of the capital plan, I mean, here you've got almost $2 million going into replacing treated water pipes, right? So that's 10%, almost 15% of the money that's going. Replacing raw water system, that's getting $2 million, almost $3 million in years out. So right there, you've spent, just in those two programs, you've spent a quarter of all of your capital resources. So it's...
And he's right in fact, in that the programmatic can be beneficial if we get a project moving along and it gets stalled for easement issues or environmental issues. It allows us to jump down to the next one and continue to get that done while we're finishing up that, and then that gets pushed into the following budget year, right? So there is some benefit to the programmatic. It was just the cap number is the part that I struggled with more, not the thought process of using the program.
I'm just trying to review in my mind the discussions. I mean, I was on engineering and all this stuff. The idea of setting up categories and buckets, and you fill the buckets.
Yeah.
And then you take an example. Okay, so a PRV program. There's maybe 10 or 15 PRVs you want to replace eventually, and you prioritize them as best you can.
Right.
But problems will crop up in any given project. It might be access problems or easement problems that take a while to resolve. And so by having money in the bucket, PRV-A may be your top priority, but it has a problem, so you don't spend the money on it, you drop down to B.
Right.
And you just tick through the projects. You put the money where the projects are ripe and ready to go. And it's a way of, it doesn't mean that Project A drops off the list. It still stays as Project A, but some of the others can move up underneath it to absorb
Yes, we can
those
continue
funds.
to do that because we've hit a roadblock, right? We don't want to stop improvements altogether just because the project gets stalled for some reason.
So Project A gets stalled, doesn't mean that you just stop on all the
Right.
other projects.
Right. Nor, like Rim was saying, right, it becomes cumbersome to the board as well as staff if you're coming back and saying, well, PRV-A got stalled, so now we want to switch the money from A to B. Is everybody okay with that? Right?
Yeah.
So we can just immediately hit the ground running to get B worked on. And
Just
let the committees, et cetera, know how we're doing it.
Historical perspective here, and we adopted this new concept of establishing buckets and categories of work some number of years ago,
Before me.
before you.
Yeah, because me coming in, I'm a traditional civil. I was ready to put money in buckets.
And this capital improvement concept has been in the budget for some number of years.
Yeah, 8 years plus.
And so
Yeah, me.
we have had a capital improvement program for this whole time that's been in the budget.
Mhm.
And Laura, you said we don't have a capital improvement program.
I didn't say that.
I think you did.
No, I never said that.
Okay, well, we do. And so, I guess the question I would have is that are the numbers that are in here are reflective of numbers we've had other years.
So some, yes, some they've been adjusted slightly.
Slightly, but it's the same basic concept that we've been dealing with.
It is. I think part of the problem or one of the weaknesses of our CIP program is that we don't have good information on all of these projects, right? Even for me, looking at these in the short term and assigning a number, it can be difficult because I don't have the background information that I need. I've got a list that I've received from ops and maintenance and hydro that tells me these are the projects, but I don't really know what that entails, right? We need to,
a problem statement for every project.
Yeah, so-
This is why we need this project.
which is what we're starting to develop now, right? That's part of what I'm doing now. We're going out, we're identifying these, we're taking pictures, we're gonna put together a scenario of here's what we need to do, here's why we need to do it, here's the estimated cost based on that initial quick review, here's the environmental work we think we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Those are all part of that, right, that then I can easily use when I build the CIP moving forward, so that, and then the board members will be able to have that information available when they're looking at the budget for the next year as to why we're doing these. Here's why we're doing them, here's the cost.
And I think that's great. You know, let's take a, you know, specific project, let's have a page here, project 6956 Osborne Hill Pipeline. It would be nice to know, you know, what the need is for that particular project.
Right.
And that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, so that you have that understanding when you make that decision, you know what we're doing and why.
You basically have a book or a spreadsheet or something that accompanies this that says, project 6966 Osborne Hill Pipeline, and you've got an amount in here of $600,000, so you've already looked at it somewhat, and there would be a statement of need. This is why this project needs to be on the list, and why
Correct.
it's going to cost money, and how it's going, completing this project will benefit the overall system.
Right, to have that information, and then the different departments have bought into that as well, right? So when engineers do their VDR, their basis of design report, and they move forward, it's already in there as to why we're doing it. And then as we move forward, if changes need to be made, if, say, ops forgot to let us know that we needed to replace this valve complex at the same time,
Yeah, I think this is.
we all have that understanding that that wasn't part of the original scope.
It's not always obvious what the rationale is.
It is not. It is not very obvious.
And I agree with that.
Absolutely. Right, that's what we're trying to fix, right?
But it's not that there is no rationale, it's just it's not written down, and you don't happen to know it.
It's tribal.
Yeah.
And we gotta
Tribal.
get away from that.
Yes, correct.
It makes all the projects very political, whoever has, and, you know, it makes it, it just makes it, you don't have any rhyme or reason, there's no apparent rhyme or reason to the
That I would,
common
right.
director or vice chairman that's not on the inside track.
People make it political.
Well, I think the thing is that what we're trying to do is make it so that the why is answered, right? I have the luxury of having a new chief engineer, so I don't have to fight the issue anymore. But to have each project have a BDR, a basis of design report, and to have a basic piece of paper that lives online, so the public can go, what is that project? This is why we're doing it. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is how we're funding it. This is where the funding sources are. We anticipate, the engineering department anticipates funding to come from. It's going to have capacity fees, it's going to have pay-go capital, it's going to have grant money. All that stuff can be delineated, and then also what environmental document are we going to use to execute the project? Is it a notice of exemption? Is it a mitigated neg deck? Is it a full EIR? All that stuff with a map and all of that jazz, that's what I was used to in my previous role as a chief engineer. And so that way, when in 2021, when you're preparing for 2022, you will get a binder. That binder will have the plan, and behind it, all of the projects with their tech memo or whatever you want to call
Set
it.
up an access database, you could just, as you build a project, I mean, we did this in the 90s when I was doing it.
So we already have one.
And so, and you just have the documents, and then, you
Yeah.
just run a query, and
Yep.
then you print a report. And so it's not extra work. I mean, it's helpful to the project engineer to understand all of this information in one place as
Yep.
part of the project.
Right.
And so,
But, and
it's just good standard practice.
The extra work is getting to
get
that
that spot.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
We're starting from
Nothing.
this, from
Yeah.
a simple statement on a piece of paper, right? So we need to get to that next step.
Yeah, and the first, you gotta start making steps. I mean,
Yep.
Right.
we just have
So
to.
I provided my old project binder to Doug, so.
Yeah, I
Kitchen
think
off of
it's
it.
a great idea.
It does, it is, absolutely. I applaud you for making that, yeah.
Okay. So,
So,
with that being said.
Now you have a project.
Now,
he's been working on this for a while now.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're running a little thin right now, but we're getting there. So if you want, we can
Take him through it.
just kind of take you through it and and we'll go from there. So we'll just start right at the beginning there, which is the ADA compliant stuff. You know, part of that, Mayor, you might be better to talk to with regards to the,
So we have an ADA plan. It's incumbent on the organization to continue to work on the plan. We can't get all the projects in the plan done in one shot, so we're in an effort to make sure that we're always making progress on getting truncated domes and all the other things that we have to do at our sites to bring them into compliance with our plan. Right now, we've put $100,000, and it runs through the year. So we consumed the money last year in making bathrooms at Recreation ADA compliant.
So this is facilities as opposed to. I
yeah,
know that we have a huge outstanding ADA compliance issue with our website, but that's IT.
Yeah, that's IT.
Different.
Yes. This is making sure that we need an elevator for the building,
ramp for this,
ramps all over the place.
that
Okay.
kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just
So
kind
it's
of ongoing.
facility improvement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which I don't have a specific list of those.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a specific list of those.
Yeah, there's an ADA plan.
Okay.
Talk to Greg, it came out of Tim's office.
Yeah, okay, all right, fair. So next one, safety, and that's the fall protection, tower training confined space facility. That was a structure that's been planned for, the last 4 or 5 years, I think, and we've just never built it. So,
Stuff on the back lot or something?
yeah, that's so our guys can train and get the certifications required to be able to do that. And then potentially be able to have other local agencies can use it as well.
Yeah, so originally it was a tower, now
Yeah.
we're thinking more it's a series of container boxes that we can stack and have holes cut in them so that they can do side entry into a tank, they can do a fall entry from the top, they can do other things. And our goal is to allow PCWA, EID, the counties to use the facility if they need to do the same thing.
It's a worthwhile project, it's just can get pushed to the side in terms of priorities at times. So,
4 years running.
yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't think we're covered for that.
So the next one is, treated water pipeline replacement. And so you can see, it's higher than previous years. And again, that goes back to the reflection of more project-specific driven in terms of the need for the budget numbers to be there. And so what you see is, basically what this is showing is within this, the idea is that we can get through and construct these first 3 items. Then the Willora Acres and the Live Oak Main are more just in the design and if there's any secret work to be done, with the real construction coming the following year. So that's kind of when I started to put this together, right? I look at things I think I can get done in the year, and then things I think that I'll have time to start them in certain aspects, but we're clearly not going to be able to do all of these projects in 1 year. So it's starting to look at the design phase and some environmental, et cetera, as we move forward, so then that falls into the next year. Correct. So that's kind of how my thought process was overall.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
On this list, on our recent, BEP
Yeah.
discussion, it came to our attention that there was a distribution system in Lake Wildwood was supposed to be replaced several years ago, and that it was badly deteriorating, is what they were told several years ago.
Yeah,
It's still not on the list.
it's not. The water lines we're not having trouble with water lines within Lake Wildwood. The areas that we have been some of the service lines, and maintenance had been going through and dealing with blocks at a time and replacing those. But the leaks are all related to the service lines and not the transmission mains.
Service lines from the transmission.
Correct, to the individual meter, right, the smaller inch and a quarter. Yeah, back in the 60s and 70s when these were installed, the poly and stuff that they used was a little less than what is used today, right? So that's where we see the trouble in Lake Wildwood in terms of the distribution system is on the,
And that would be in
on that.
a different bucket?
well, that would be within maintenance's,
So maintenance is taking care of that problem.
yeah.
Oh, that's the maintenance.
Yeah, because it would be our guys going in there and so what they were
Not a
doing,
program like we did the meters.
right, so they're just going in there and they're replacing those and working in chunks. That was the thought process for that, yeah.
Okay.
said, other than you'll have better information as we move forward.
So what are these top three? Just give us a brief rundown on why these are the top three projects.
So these come as the top three projects, they get pushed directly from operations and maintenance, right? Part of what I see the engineering department's role is we're customer service, and our customers are ops and hydro and recreation and maintenance. They're the ones that run and operate the facilities. They're the ones that are telling me, I need to get this fixed because we're constantly having trouble with it. So these projects come directly from the list that I have with the department managers, right? In this case, it's mostly coming from Chip's group. Part of what we'll be doing as we move forward here towards budget time is I will be meeting with all the department managers, confirming that these are the priorities that we want to do, confirming that this is what we're doing, right? So when we come to the board for budget time, we've finalized it, because things change, right? Their priorities can change even within the Vernon pipeline, raw water pipeline that popped on us a couple weeks ago. That wasn't even on anybody's radar.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it blew. It's a problem. Now it needs to get put on the radar and start the process, right? So it's always evolving.
Yeah, because it seems like relocating a pipeline from the back of the house wouldn't be as critical as pipes that are leaking now.
Yeah, but that may be the problem, right? That they're leaking, that they're having trouble with them, and trying to maintain and repair a pipeline in backyards is very difficult, because everybody's got their gardens and their shrubs and their sheds and
gazebos and garages.
and pools, and it's just,
Yeah.
sometimes it makes sense on paper to run it through backyards, but man, it is a
So when,
bad process.
so when we bring this to you at the next meeting, when we solidify the 21s and we have then we have the little technical memorandums, you'll have all the operational department heads here as well.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah,
they
so
can
have that
have that discussion.
Right. So you can get more information in terms of why the need, yeah.
All right.
So we can go on to the next, which is pressure reducing valve. This is, again, relatively straightforward. We've been doing a couple of them, so we're starting to get a feel for what the costs are. They're ranging from 100 to 130, 140, depending on the facility and location. So I've got 125 sitting there for each one, for two. So I think that's sufficient to be able to do that there.
With the exception of next year.
With the, I was gonna get to that, yeah, with the exception of next year. So,
And wasn't the Sunset PRV lumped into the E. George project? 2367?
I would have to double check that. I
That's probably correct.
Yeah.
That as an upsizing of it,
Yes.
Yeah, it's undersized even for current.
even for current use,
So.
yeah, right. So for this next year's budget, 2021, you'll see that Bergen Lane has a higher number. And the reason for that is that is a small spur, small lateral that just serves a small amount of homes. It's not connected. It's a dead-end run. It's actually better to remove the PRV altogether and just upsize and replace the existing pipeline, and then put individual PRVs for those that need it within that small service area. It's a small pipeline that serves a relatively small group of folks that doesn't extend anywhere, so we don't need additional flows to go up there. It's strictly being reduced to handle the high pressure for that little group of homes. And so the thought is, let's get rid of the PRV station, because we don't have the easements for it to bring it above ground and to do all that. Let's just replace the pipeline and go
And
for
think
that.
of high-pressure services.
Yeah, correct, right. So that's the thought process for that. And that's why that one's a little bit more, because it's more about replacing the pipeline. In the long run, it's the better choice, ultimately. So next one's raw water. And you see, so there's a couple things here. One is the South Yuba repairs. Right now what I've done is I just put a block of $500,000 in there for the next 5 years. When we get that study from GHD, when we get that finished and completed, we'll have a much better understanding of what we think we need to replace and what needs to be replaced first. Then this will all change.
When is that anticipated?
Because of COVID, we're probably at the end of the year. maybe the first part of next year, because
Will
partly,
we have that facility by then?
I don't know. I think we're still in escrow, right,
I don't know.
in theory?
Yeah, I don't know. We're waiting for FERC to issue the license.
Yeah. So we got delayed a little bit because of
This is the Deer Creek license.
the COVID issue in terms of being able to get folks out there. They missed the opportunity to do the inspections on the tunnels, so they gotta wait till the fall outage, along with some other stuff. So it's just pushed everything out a little bit. But by the end of the year, the first of next year, that report will be done. We'll have a plan from there that we can develop and put into the CIP on how we move forward with maintaining, repairing, and fixing this facility. So that'll all change. It's just a placeholder that I put in there at this point.
Just curious, you know, we're taking over this facility, you know, we have a block of money in there for maintenance year over year. What's the appropriate time, to think about probably, replumbing the whole system? You know, we've talked about this Doug Roberts Memorial Tunnel.
Well, hopefully not Memorial.
Yeah. Don't kill the messenger.
Not yet.
Yeah.
The Doug Roderick,
Honorary.
Yeah.
tunnel.
I think once you get the study,
Right, it's gonna,
So then,
show.
you know, there'll come a point when this board has to really look at that facility and whether or not some radical change in the way that system is plumbed, is called for.
yeah, and that's part of the
Yeah.
study, right? You're gonna have to look at costs, and you're gonna have to look at risks, and then there's a lot of pieces that go into
And
that, right?
over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, that is obviously very susceptible to fire concerns and spots, as
Huge
well
liability there.
as landslides and some of those other things, but tunneling is not a cheap endeavor either, right? So that's why you gotta weigh all of
At some
them
point, you're
and make the
gonna have to
decisions.
weigh,
Exactly.
the long-term benefits of replumbing that system rather than, you know, continuing to purchase stuff
Right.
or whatever.
Again, this is kind of along that sediment conversation. We don't know, right? We have anecdotal evidence and limited evidence from PG&E about how much they spent on it during the outage and during maintenance. We don't yet know what that impact is gonna be to us in terms of our operational game, right? The reason I say that is because right now, PG&E operates the canal at 85 CFS. It has a capacity of 107 CFS. We wanna run it full bore, right? We wanna make sure that we can get as much power out of Deer Creek Powerhouse as we can to support the cost of maintaining the facility, and we also wanna keep as much water in Scotts Flat as we can during the summer. So, you know, clearly there's gonna be an operational configuration change around that canal, as NID moves forward. And I agree, I think with the study will tell you, these are all the this is the pantheon of capital work that you have ahead of you. And then you can say, well, it'll cost us, and I'm gonna make the numbers up, it's gonna cost us $10 million to bore through the hill, or it's gonna cost us $20 million to make sure that the elevated wood flume through this section is appropriate and can operate. I think right there, the value judgment that the board will make is very clear, right? But yeah, the hard part's gonna be around the nuts, right? What if it's 11 million to dig a tunnel and it's 10 million to fix it? Or it's 12 million to fix it, and it's, you know, that's where it gets kinda nasty. But in the end,
Stuff comes into play.
yeah,
And we have, PG&E's maintenance records to date?
no,
Why not?
no, 'cause they don't have them. We got 3 bankers boxes for a facility that's over 100 years old.
Huh.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah.
I guess the thing.
That's why we spent $1.
You know, the thing that keeps me up at night, is, you know, I'm familiar with that high flow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is critical infrastructure. I mean, that could burn in 5 minutes.
It could, but Nick,
But maybe not.
I would say that in its entire lifespan,
It's not
it has never burned. It has been hit by wind and blown over. It has been, there are a lot of things that
Rocks,
trees,
that kind of stuff.
rocks and stuff hurt it, but it has never burned. And the sections, that are,
Critical aren't in fire prone areas.
Yeah,
I guess
no,
lightning would be the
It's all rock right there.
it's all rock,
And
so,
so maybe the strategy is to do a little bit more clearing around the flume.
which is difficult because Forest Service has traditionally precluded tree clearing along the alignment.
And,
That was in.
and you gotta remember that, part of what we talked about when I presented that study, or the consulting contract, right, is we're gonna look at places where we can improve access for maintenance, et cetera, which will also be able to improve our access in an emergency situation. If we spend a little money up front and develop some additional roadways or access points, something catastrophic does happen in a section, we're much quicker to be able to mobilize and fix that problem versus trying to create the access to get there and then fix the problem, right? So those are all things that we'll have to look at and identify, and those are part of this study that we'll be looking at.
Yeah, so as the maintenance tempo comes up for NID, you'll start to get a feel for what your annual capital outlays will be. We have built sufficient reserve capacity in hydroelectric to take one, maybe two big events back to back. We know that over the time period that I've been working with the facility, it's been hit with roughly $16 to $17 million worth of repairs.
Yeah, we,
They've done.
There were two major events. I remember a microburst touched down
The
there.
microburst
and-
blew some trees.
And took out about 10 trees across.
Like a mini tornado came up the canyon, a micro wind burst hit these trees, shoved them into the canal.
It knocked about half a dozen trees this big around right across the flume.
Smashed it.
Yeah,
wow.
didn't hold up.
Yeah.
And then we had the slide.
Then we had the slide.
And that metal high flume that was primo. All of a
But
sudden,
it's still,
junk.
Just disappeared.
it's no different than phase one, right?
Yeah.
Phase one was very susceptible to trees falling and rocks, et cetera.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so the whole system makes me nervous.
Yep.
And,
Given that it serves 80% of our treated water customers, yeah, it should be.
yeah, good reason to be
they're
nervous.
very important.
And that's why we had to buy it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a choice.
Right.
And
Yeah, it wasn't
Maven, Maven Canal, that's in, Scott?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just old, but
Yeah, so again, without having the details, but it's got a moratorium, I believe, in portions of it, as well as it's an old facility, it's got a lot of leaking, it's constant maintenance work, right? So that's why it's being driven to the front, is because maintenance is having to deal with it on a
and what about the
regular basis.
Centennial siphon?
So the Santini siphon, the same thing, so you've got a moratorium on the Santini siphon, and so
It's on the Newtown Canal.
no, Santini's in Flasher County, it's off of the Dudley, I think that's the Dudley
Is that
Canal.
by where we were today, yesterday, or that's?
No, it's a little farther over. It's off of Chili Hill
Okay.
and,
Go east and south.
yeah,
By Gold Hill, right?
Gold Hill, it's Chili Hill and, I can't think of that other
Something
term.
lane.
So
Anyway, so-
it will free up moratorium.
Yes, absolutely. So there's two, there's a Santini one, and then it daylights to about 300 foot of open canal, and then it goes into the Santini two. So we're placing the Santini one where the constriction is. Santini two has quite a bit of headfall on it. It will need to be replaced, but it's not necessarily the choke point. Choke point is the first phase. And so we're in design right now. There's actually a potential that we can build it this year. We'll need to get an easement from the property owner. At this point, seems willing to do that. So we've been working on that. And so if the stars align correctly, that is something we could bid out and do in the fall. And whether that's our crews doing that, which they've shown interest, or whether we'd have to bid that out would depend on the timing in terms of that. But we are hoping we can move that one forward this year as well, with Doty, so they'd be constructed roughly at the same time.
That would be awesome. A lot of people don't have a water.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the driver, right? That's part of the driver for priorities for operations, is that you have these moratoriums. In addition to the facts that, they may be leaking like a sieve, or we're constantly having to Band-Aid them, or, punch wood
pegs into,
pegs into the steel pipe. We've done that quite a bit. Put a band around it. Absolutely, and same with the 8. There's several, pipelines through there. Maintenance came to us asking if we can push that forward this year. So we ran out there and got some survey work done, so there may be an opportunity for maintenance to actually construct that, or at least some of those
Where's
this year.
that at?
That is also down in Placer County.
8?
Yeah, that's over off of, what's that, is it Garden Bar, Wise, thinking what's the, oh shoot, there's another road that I'm, anyway, it's down that direct, it's in
You're gonna give me a
Placer
canal,
County. That'll be part of what that
watershed.
packet will include a vicinity map and an idea where these things are too, so you'll be able to see that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely down in Placer County.
Okay.
And again, the same thought process, right? There's some of these that, we think we can get done in a year, there's others that we start next year and then actually build it the following year.
Is this Doty North, the same Doty North as of our,
No,
how come it's
so,
so far down?
because it's
No
the
problem.
canal, correct, and so that's part of that is part of my lack of understanding of what these projects are, which is why we're working on those. But it's not Doty North Siphon 1, that's a separate one. This is, Doty North is not on here because we're building that this year, so it's not in the 21 budget. But this is for the canal, and I can't tell you exactly what it's for. But in the future, we will be able to, or at least be able to flip to it. I probably won't remember, but I'll be able to.
Before you can take a request for service, to have the operations people, the maintenance people, the hydro people, review their problem statement.
Right. Like I said, we should be a customer service oriented group for a lot of us. Our ops folks tell us what they need and how they need it, and then we make it happen.
Not go build it.
Exactly. We shouldn't be driving that.
So we should understand why we're doing it.
Yes, absolutely. Next one is the backbone extension. And, what you see there is E. George, and that is based, again, well, let me back up here. In terms of the capacity fees, you see that there's tax revenues and capacity fees. That was driven from the previous year. He had put that number in there as 500,000 coming from capacity fees for the BET program. So I've left it in there at this point. I don't know if that's,
What do you mean capacity fees? People aren't hooking up, right? This is only
so,
people hooking up, right?
so part of this is capacity to Lake Wildwood.
And, well, in the area that is not served,
Area
so,
that's not served.
so the folks that have been paying in, that are gonna get service along the route to Lake Wildwood.
Yeah. We have 185 of them that has chosen not to connect, so.
But-
Well, those, that's what Chip was saying, and those are on Pleasant Valley Road front, the pipeline that goes from Lake Wildwood over to Penn Valley. So many years ago, Penn Valley was a standalone system and, was not served by the Lake Wildwood treatment plant. And then they built the intertie, I guess that was one of the original BEP projects,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't called that then.
Right.
And so that pipe goes right down Pleasant Valley Road, goes up to the Penn Valley tanks, and serves those tanks, and all the people along Pleasant Valley Road have been paying standby fees
Mm-hmm.
for many years.
Yes,
And I've never connected.
and have never connected. But they have to be considered a connection, because at any time they can connect.
That's right, but historically, they've never connected.
Right, but the capacity fees is for the folks that are, we're not even talking,
So we're gonna make them pay capacity fees just for.
no, we're not even talking about these people. These people are not the issue.
The new people, the new people.
The new people on the way down to Rough and Ready, and then from Rough and Ready over to Lake
They can pay
Wildwood,
capacity fees
yes.
if they choose not to connect.
then they pay a standby.
It would be standby if they don't do capacity fees.
Yeah,
They would only pay capacity fees when they actually.
when they connect.
Connect,
Which is why that,
yeah.
right,
$5.
which is why that it's just a
Yeah,
placeholder
so
that
this
was
is
there
a
previous,
inflated-
but that's
really
not
inflated
necessarily whether we would be using 500 each
Yeah, yeah.
per year or not. That would be a year-to-year basis thing that we would look at.
This is not necessarily a real number.
And so what we're looking at here in terms of the 5-year plan is just based on the current understanding of building this on a yearly basis, that we're gonna build this project out over an 8 or a 10-year period. So that's reflective of those,
We could choose to fund it otherwise.
so this
Right.
plan is reflective of
10-year.
Of that.
period.
that,
In Pago.
And this is
looking
5
those-
years, so 10 million in 5 years, the other 10
yeah,
million.
right, so you actually, there's more money in the upfront, the first couple of years, those first couple of phases are the higher numbers. After that, the numbers tend to get smaller as you move on to the second round of phases.
So in
So,
the
but
first
it's
2
based
years,
on
would we
those
take this extra $500,000 that we're likely not gonna get in capacity fees and have to use additional tax revenue?
You have a war chest of about 8 million in capacity fees currently.
So capacity fees from all over the district
Yeah.
pools into one reserve.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's not capacity fees from this project,
No,
Oh, okay.
it's capacity fees
Correct.
district-wide.
Correct.
That are
But they're
then,
limited on what you can use them for.
yeah, they have to be used at the transmission level.
Yeah,
but they're available for projects anywhere in the district.
yeah, correct.
Okay, I get it.
Or treated water projects.
Correct, we don't have capacity fees yet for raw water.
Capacity fees for
And so the only other BEP program, or BEP potential even on the horizon that we see at this point is a potential like well with the Smartsville. And that would be to ultimately try to remove Smartsville, the treatment plant altogether, like we did similar to Cascade Shores, which is just eliminate that small treatment plant and serve
What's
those.
the capacity of that treatment plant?
44 connections,
Yeah, it's a little one. I don't know what the capacity is.
0.4 million gallons,
Yeah, it's
like
less
half,
than-
it's tiny,
It's around a half or
0.4.
less, yeah. It's not a very big one. But that's way down the line. Right?
But
That would just be a start of a planning or an understanding of what it would take to get water to them, et cetera.
we continue to serve them because the service is required every other ordinance.
This is the RCO.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
It is an RCO.
Right.
Raw water lines down in Smartsville that are on the list to be replaced as well. In fact, they may have even been on that. Yeah, they were.
So they get raw water as well?
Yeah,
So there was some raw water
So
improvements
those people are in Bellevue.
yeah.
up in the 2023.
Someday the district might
Yeah,
decide
I know
to,
they keep that gentleman from you, Water Agency, wanted us to accelerate that, because there was another development, Gold Hills or something.
Gold, yeah.
Yeah,
country, gold something.
With crappy wells that,
and those raw water lines are running either right through town,
Yep,
through yards, and it's just
it's bad.
all a
Okay.
bad thing. So the next one is, community investment. And so you see here is we've got Loma Rica, that we have,
Just cap out right there?
Second. I'm trying to see. Because we're building Loma Rica. Okay, anyway, the idea being is that, I'm gonna have to go back and look at that, I apologize. I was thinking we had some money in this year and then next year, and I've got it as next year and then the following year.
You got it.
So,
You burned up everything
I burned up everything for this
for
year.
Table Meadows.
And so, next year is that we would start that process, right, get it going, and then,
Yes.
and then finish it up in that secondary year, so 2021
And so
and
these
22.
wharf hydrant replacements, we don't have any partners helping us pay for any of this? No one else, we're just doing it out of the goodness of our heart?
Yeah,
So,
because we're using property taxes to
yeah,
to
so
meet fire flow needs within the district and to make sure that we have a safe fire system. That's,
some of that comes out of capacity fees too, doesn't it?
no,
no,
nothing. No, this
So
is
I've just-
tax from property tax.
I added that, right, so this was a line item that I added into the CIP, which is the wharf hydrant, because we've got such a large number of wharf hydrants that we need to start replacing. I thought this was a good location to put it into in terms of the, community investment to upgrade these hydrants. And to just start picking at them, because we have so many, we can't just go out and do them all in one chunk, we're gonna have to, kinda like the
Now,
PRVs,
Are you
we're
looking
gonna
at
have to
grant
spread
funding? It
this out.
seems like with all this fire being all the rage,
Those are things we
Uh-huh.
you know, we should be really pursuing
Well, I think those are things that we can look at,
additional
right,
funding to help
is
some
there's
of these
other things that we can
problems, where
do.
we have partners doing some of this work.
You know, and part of the problem we have with wharf hydrants is a lot of them are on very small distribution lines. So part of what we need to do is upsizing, right? We've got a bunch of 4-inch lines, that we need to upsize, it's not adequate.
And people aren't getting water in their home.
Well, they're getting water in their home,
Can't meet fire flow.
but you can't, the restrictions are how much water can be available for those
You need
hydrants.
an 8-inch line for fire flow.
What's that?
You need an 8-inch line for fire flow.
It depends on where you're at. Typically, that's what you would do. I would not recommend going less than that, just because of the difference between a 6 and an 8-inch pipe is minimal in terms of cost. It's the same trench, it's the same construction.
It's actually more expensive to put in a 6-inch pipe, because the valves are harder to haul.
Yeah.
Off the shelf, man, always off the shelf.
But that's part of another bigger piece, right, that we need to start looking at, which is all of our existing infrastructure, right? We've got 118 miles of AC pipe in our distribution system. Almost a quarter of our treated water pipelines are AC pipe, which, if they're functioning, it's okay, right? They're fine.
And at some point they fall.
But if they fall apart, or we need, a lot of those are 6- and 4-inch lines, right? Those were done back in the 60s and the 70s, and they minimized a lot of that. Lake Wildwood, Lake of the Pines, two big communities that are, I'm sorry, Lake Wildwood and Lake of the Pines are two of the big communities that have mostly AC piping, because they were constructed back in that time frame. So we need to start to look at overall.
It's the importance of our standard details.
Well, they weren't constructed by us.
Yeah.
You're gonna put a pipe in, and we're gonna be taking it over and putting water through it.
Yeah, now-
The-
And now that's the case, right? Most of these were developments that were done, and then,
Granted to us.
they were handed to us after the fact.
Yeah,
So
we need to get.
we
into
don't,
that
definitely
first.
wouldn't do that.
Well, and that's something I asked Doug to do a while back, it was a few months ago, was to go through the entirety of the system in HGIS and identify, size and type.
Right.
So AC pipe is not the burning issue for you at this point. You've
Right.
got a long run of techite you gotta get out. You've got a bunch of small steel you gotta get out. So there's work to be done. And right now, getting this tuned appropriately so that you're talking about what that avalanche of capital is,
Where's the Techite now? Because I know we got.
So it's actually, if you look back on the raw water section, that's scheduled to start work in 2022, so it doesn't have an idea. It's about 8,600 feet of 24-inch pipe on Clipper Creek.
Clipper Creek?
Yeah, that runs from,
And this is raw water.
that's raw water.
yeah.
Where does it
Well,
lead?
I thought we replaced
Where
all.
does it go to?
It goes- We replaced the Clipper Creek siphon as part of the Bannock Cascade project. But there's still 8,600 feet of 24-inch techite pipe that runs from the airport area over,
This is Loma Rica.
yeah, over that direction.
Brunswick area.
Yes. That needs to be replaced, because techite, as we all know, right, is, it doesn't just leak when it fails catastrophically. It just lets go. And so, it's a long stretch, long run. And so that's also on our list to start doing that. In the seventies, it was
The 70s,
new, latest and greatest stuff.
yeah,
Right, it was the next greatest thing, it was
Yeah,
It was
and like
cheap,
Texas
it was-
in the house.
yeah.
It was lightweight, it was easy to move, you didn't need big equipment, you didn't have to worry about corrosion, et cetera. Some of those things, that's what was touted as why it was so good. Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Kinda like the old poly pipes for the service laterals.
Yeah.
That was the
Pipe, everybody was like,
thing.
pipe's the best.
Yeah.
Don't do copper, copper's hard, it's
Yeah.
expensive. You just lay this stuff in, you can be in and out in a day.
Yep. Doesn't require real technical,
So right now, our budget
Craftsmanship.
for community investment is $500,000 a year. That's what we're,
for this year,
This year.
I'm recommending 500. So for the next year, you see I've got it at 1.1, so that way we can incorporate and build Loma Rica, district financed, and then it adds the 100,000.
I think given our current financial, I mean, we had 60% before, or simple majority 66%, or,
Simple.
and then they went down to 50%. I think that given our current situation, we should consider, I mean, I'd like to have a discussion, I think. Let's put it back where it originally was, to make sure we have buy-in from the community, so we're not just going out there
But I think,
and investing in,
Laura, I think I appreciate the point, and I would agree with the point, but at this point, that's a waste of your time. Maranatha is the last EFWLE we have slated. I think we've exhausted the low hanging fruit. No, but we have no other projects,
yeah.
so you might as
And
well,
we might not even get 50% on these two.
you might not.
Right. Loma Rica, I think we're more confident. Maranatha's,
Yeah,
Maranatha's been here before
yeah.
okay.
and failed before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so we just, yeah.
And we have, is it all right? I guess it's okay to talk about Table Meadow.
Yeah.
So we'll be bringing Table Meadow forward to APC.
And we didn't even have 50% on that one.
No, we did.
We did
We were one short.
Oh, one short.
one bailed, but now we've got 3 more to
Now we've
plan.
got 3 more that are interested in coming on board. And so what we're gonna have a discussion in APC is if they can get the same financing options that the current ones that had already previously signed up for or not. Right now, the regs don't allow that, but we wanna have that discussion and whether we should change that in terms of when that final drop dead date is, kind of thing, right? So anyway, we've got a few more coming on board.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The next was extended CEQA. The only one that we have there is the last 2 years for Banner Cascade Pipeline. You know, we did that at the engineering committee this year, so. Yeah, exactly. That's what it was for, so. So the next one then is the sediment removal. And understand that I think this is gonna change quite a bit, depending on our outcome and our discussions as we move forward after we determine where we're at in terms of our reservoir survey that I talked about
So
earlier.
War Creek's gonna be on the back burner?
Yeah.
We're not moving forward with War Creek at all.
No, because I think that's one where we need to consider whether we should just be removing it or abandoning it versus trying to clean it up and fix.
Bad shape.
It is, and having to replace the dam or improve the structure itself in addition to cleaning
Looking
it.
at that Gold Hill diversion on there, that's scary. That pipe that goes,
Yeah.
The Gold Hill Canal.
oh my.
Well, the whole thing's scary, right, Laura? I mean, come on,
Yeah.
it's stacked rock with concrete on top and then flying buttress on top of that.
Yeah.
It's like, what were you people doing,
Yeah.
right? Clearly, there wasn't a trained civil engineer involved, right? This
Yeah.
is kind of farmer stuff.
Right. And so some of those, right,
So it
that's,
worries me that that's getting pushed off, that's in dire straits, I think.
well, I've got it in for next year, $250,000 for Ore Creek, for the cleaning component of it. So if we go nowhere, or we continue to just operate as we currently are, even after we take a look at all these reservoirs and make a determination and a plan moving forward, then we'll have money in there next year to start cleaning that reservoir. And then, of course, it would also have a different project in terms of replacing or upgrading the existing diversion structure itself, right, which is probably a replacement, not, I doubt we're gonna be able to fix what's there.
Badly deteriorated.
Right.
And there's a lot of water, there's a lot of people relying on that.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, relying on the
Gold Hill.
on the diversion, yeah.
Yeah.
The diversion, not the reservoir storage component of it.
No.
Right, so whether that's just making improvements to our diversion facility, moving them upstream and running through a pipe around the edge of the reservoir, and then abandoning the reservoir, removing the existing dam, and do a restoration, et cetera.
Downstream of that, we don't use
No.
that?
We don't use that. From that point forward, I'm unaware of any other
Yeah,
accounts.
Connection. Okay.
so that's a prime example of one that be money
It's in dire straits,
well spent to just be done with it,
yeah.
right? Because we'll have to spend some money to be done with it.
Yeah,
Won't be able to just walk away from it.
right.
But it's probably better off to do it that way than,
But I think that one specifically has a community that's around it
yeah.
that will want it.
Yeah, they've expressed interest in wanting to keep it, or they've expressed concern for us potentially abandoning it,
Right.
getting rid of it.
So,
So those are things, that's what these smaller ones, right, we're gonna have to deal with some of that stuff, which is, the folks right around it are most likely gonna still want it, because it's a water feature and they like it, et
Liability
cetera.
too, though.
Yeah,
right, but they have to decide.
They assume the liability for the.
Yeah, so that's part of that discussion, and the board ultimately is giving staff direction that, yes, we want you to move forward with either eliminating them or abandoning them. So when we have discussions with folks, they understand that, it's the board telling us that we need to just get rid of this facility.
Well, I think beyond the board, that it doesn't serve an operational need for the
Correct.
district anymore.
Right.
In the old days, we needed these small reservoirs to smooth out the bobble in the greater system. We are much more elegant in our operation at this point.
Yeah.
So the ability for us to drop water at Door Creek Diversion, which you've seen there along the Combi-Ophir system, we can open and close that now within minutes, and so the Gold Hill system no longer needs a reservoir to buffer, to
And it essentially doesn't have a reservoir that it's supposed to have.
Right,
exactly.
It's
So,
really not even acting as a reservoir.
No,
Exactly.
there's really no real operational benefit at this
Yeah,
point. It's all
not
liability,
functioning.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so anyway, that whole section will
yeah,
change.
subject to change.
Yeah.
Then last one within the engineering capital is the non-programmatic. You'll see that we've got 400,000 in Combi Phase One for 2021. That's for potential road restoration. So the construction contract's already been awarded and encumbered, and that money is done. So what this is, when we're all said and done and we pull out of there, there's a good chance that we have impacted portions of that road that we're gonna need to fix. Because these are all private roads.
This is
That
that
are-
same road that was at APC last week, or last month? Combi Phase One, Combi, that road.
No,
No, that's access to the
that's
dam.
Combi's to the.
Oh, yeah, no,
south-
correct, that's
south access.
the dam off of the Placer County.
Access to the
Okay.
power plant.
This is our construction route through Table Meadow. So when we went and saw the project,
Yeah.
you went off of
Other side of the river.
the Combi Road, right, and then, so that whole neighborhood is a private road. And those roads have not necessarily been designed or constructed to very good standards and have been piecemealed over the years. With us operating and running all those heavy trucks and pipes through there to get our project done, we know we're gonna damage the road. And we've been working with the road association, right, they understand that we're gonna come back to them at the end. We've taken photographs, we've taken videos, we know what's there, we know there'll be some improvements. Whether we put a chip seal over it, we're done after we fix some spots, et cetera. So that's why that number's sitting in there, is for that potential road restoration work that we're gonna have to do at some point when the project's done, which would be next year. Hemp Hill, you see the 300,000 for next year. Thought process is that would start the design work and some of the other components once the environmental document gets completed. So the environmental document's already been encumbered through this year's budget. So that'll be next year, which would be, I don't know if the final document, I think, is scheduled for,
April 2021.
No.
April's the draft.
Draft.
Final.
That'll be the
By
draft,
fall.
so by fall will be the final one. So there's not gonna be a lot of opportunity to do much in terms of construction in that first year, right? So it's really starting to look at what alternative that the board is moving forward with and starting that design process, et cetera,
And we're only budgeting $4.5 million
Right now.
right now.
because, as you mentioned, that 6-mile pipeline that seems to be the preferred alternative. It's gonna be like $8 million or more.
So that's the question, right? I mean, these guys are gonna have to do their work. There's a lot of pieces in that. Right now, I think that $4 million's a really low-end placeholder, for sure. It's gonna be somewhere between 5 and 10 million, no matter what.
Depends on what we do as well.
Right,
Yeah.
and really it's next year.
And hopefully we're gonna go into it open-minded.
And so next year, when we get through that document, we'll know what we're doing, whatever that option may be. Then, next year's CIP, right, we'll be able to drive that number and nail it pretty tightly in terms of how we're gonna do it and when we're gonna do that, what the timing is, right? Part of the problem, it is ASAP, but we're
6 years
working,
ago, it'd have been good.
we're working within a flashy system, and if we don't get done with our environmental document till late summer, early fall, then our window to work within the ravine potentially shrinks, right? So now you're talking at least until the next year to be able to do
And
some
there's
work
no
and
penalty
bypassing,
for
et
getting
cetera.
done early. I mean, we can finish that environmental document early. We don't need to stake every single day.
Right now, our schedule has it finishing before April 1st. Yeah, April 1st is the mandate date. Right now, we've got the end of January, first part of February on our current schedule.
Good.
That's what we're hoping to do. So Combi Access Road, that was one of the, at APC. That's basically getting the easement and then constructing the road. So we expect that to be in that $300,000 range. We've got an estimate, we've got a decent number from Nevada City Engineering when they did their layout, so we think that's
Are easements more expensive if we have to condemn for it?
Of course.
yeah. Because you have to go through,
Oh, it depends on the person you're condemning,
and how far you get.
how far they gotta go before you settle.
How much they wanna find it.
Yeah, whether we get to arbitration and or actually go to court versus settle before, or they, I think we should, whether we agree that the take is necessary, and then it's just a discussion on the cost, right? There's a bunch of different pieces how that could play out.
And that would be what this would be mostly for, is just to get that.
Well, I think most of this
It's for construction. Because the easements we need, based on that alternative, are very small. The areas that we need are very small with regards to the property owners. So,
So are we contemplating eminent domain on this?
not,
hope not, right? One property owner has already indicated willingness
right,
to work with the district. The other property owner, we'll see.
we'll be able to go out there and set stakes on the ground and really talk about what we're intending to do, right, to make sure they understand what we're trying to do, and some things we can do to try to eliminate or alleviate some of their concerns or potential issues related to that.
Might be fencing that we could offer.
And a gate.
Yeah, gates,
There might be fencing we can offer.
fencing or gate, right, some of those types of things to minimize their
Well,
concern.
I remember one of the objections was that it was gonna go near the house and, they had privacy
Right,
concerns and, privacy fencing could help.
The North Auburn high lift pumps, and that includes a new generator and the VFDs. We're actually working on that now. We're reviewing proposals for the design of all of that.
This is at the treatment plant?
This is at the North Auburn treatment plant, so it needed VFDs. We needed a backup generator for the PSPS events.
Oh, and that's in here?
That's all part of that.
What is
Variable.
Variable drive, frequency drive pump. They can ramp up and down versus just on or off. Like I said, we're reviewing that now, and we may be able to even get into a construction contract by the end of this year, depending on how that goes, so. And then the next one down is the Lake Wildwood Water Treatment Plant, and those were the items identified in that HDR report. Mostly,
So we wouldn't start these until next year?
these would get done next year.
Some of them are already done.
Not these.
Or
Not
not these,
not
but
these.
Chip was saying some of it.
Yeah, all the valves have been replaced,
Yeah, the valves,
tanks have been replaced.
this is really
About
the
a 10 by-
intake screen
Yeah.
up at the top, probably the automated intake screen, and then as well as the big one is the drying bed.
So this would be the last item that was identified by.
Those were the 3 items identified in that report as things that need to be done at the beginning
Sure.
to be able to allow the treatment plant to operate at a longer timeframe.
Sure.
So, those are in there. Here's Ore Creek. Again, that I think is subject to change, but this is related to the dam itself. So we've got design work starting in that next year, and then potentially some actual construction work. Right now, that $800,000 is just kind of a wag
Yeah.
in terms of what needs to be done out there if we decide to rebuild it and move forward with
Yeah, I
it,
don't know how
so.
far upstream, it goes from a random straight into that reservoir, right? So there's no real piping.
No, but where there's
You have
a
to do it very well further up or something.
Yeah, you'd have to do another diversion dam.
version, yeah.
But it's got a nice little canyonette before it comes into that,
Yeah,
to the reservoir, where you could put in a pretty decent little small divert.
Yeah, to meet our needs, yeah.
And that's what this would be for.
That would be part of that process, yeah.
Okay.
And then the last one on there of note is Centennial, and that is, at this point, the board, had discussions last year and decided to go with $500,000 in the budget, so that's where that number is sitting there this year. Again, those will be subject to discussions when we come forward with that budget cost numbers, right? We'll have a little better understanding of what we would anticipate get done next year.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
excuse me, so anyway, that's for the overall. At the bottom here, you'll see, the estimates that in terms of capital, and then what we anticipate of, so here, let me back up. So the bottom one is the tax revenues, that's the number that comes in that feeds the capital improvement program. The total engineering capital is those projects that I can think or can reasonably consider that we can work on and move forward with at $11.2 million. So in next year's budget, I've got almost $2 million going into reserves to help war chest for the future.
So this is
Correct.
the sum of all these numbers in this
Correct.
column.
Yep,
So our objective is to build up your,
to build up the reserves.
to be 20.
Right,
million in there, so it's gonna take, exactly.
Yeah, so we'll start to do that, and what you'll see is, the last 2 years there, we have almost 4 million in 25. Part of that is looking forward at some big costs, especially related to hydroelectric in Scotts Flat that we'll be talking about later today, right? That's starting to think about the need to war chest some monies to be able to build some bigger project stuff that's coming down the road.
Maintenance stuff. The bigger project stuff, meaning nice and stuff, slash.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Anyway, it shows at least roughly $1 million going into reserves every year. In this next year,
What was historically that number been?
0.
0. And every dime I got.
Yep.
Good. All right.
absolutely. So the next two are the water and maintenance, and this information is basically come right off of what was done last year, and this is through both Chip's and Jacqueline's groups, and we'll be sitting down and looking at these a little closer as we move forward to the budget stuff to see if these things need to be adjusted or changed. But it's not part of the, I'm not very good at this part of it. It's not part of the capital improvement program, because it resides within the water.
It lives.
Looking for help.
Yeah, I get it. I'm watching. I'm waiting for you to say, Rem. But what happens is what you guys have just gone through is our capital expenditure budget, and this is the budget that comes out of taxes, and these are the projects that are going into engineering, and engineering is executing. This is the maintenance capital, operations and maintenance capital. So these numbers are coming out of the departments. So when you look in the departments and they're asking for materials, or they're asking for trucks, or they're asking for meter replacement projects, stuff like that, that's here, and that money is coming from rates. So that's why they're in two different buckets.
And where is the hydro project?
They're coming.
They're coming. Flip the page.
So this is taking into account that you're also doing this and hydro's work with.
So the operational units generally are doing their work. So this is maintenance, right? So if they're working on the tar, they're not coming back to get a set of plans. They're not going to engineering to get the work. They're going out and they're renewal and replace.
Okay.
If they need assistance, obviously.
Then you guys provide it.
Okay.
But it's not generally driven through us.
Right. So this committee won't be working inside this space when you're going through the budget, right? This work's going to be discussed inside in their M&R and in the WHO. Okay?
If they need engineering, they would come to.
Correct.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, engineering's here to provide support.
So they're not getting their own consultants. I heard some that are
No.
getting their own consultants and doing consulting work and other.
Some of these they will do, Jacqueline has hired a consultant in terms of environmental to determine if stuff needs to be done or not.
Environmental documents.
Environmental documents, whether they
I
need
would
to.
prefer the engineers to do the consulting.
Yeah, I think you're talking about like with regards to Doty North, right? The siphon originally generated was in maintenance.
Yeah,
The maintenance manager previous to Jacqueline,
yeah.
who was a licensed engineer, had hired a consultant to design the crossing. And then when the permitting became problematic, they punted over to engineering.
Yeah, but that's not a good practice.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I disagree with that practice. Okay.
So we can just skip through this part and go to want to take them through hydro really quick?
Yeah.
Because we're almost to 11.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, so this is one, Kean's group developed this,
Okay, so we're on we're on the hydroelectric page, so we're
Page numbers, the second to the last page.
yeah, right there.
yeah.
Light blue boxes.
3 pages.
You got it. Right here, this one.
Yeah.
There you go. No, you're good.
So that first one, the non-programmatic, he's got money in there to look at, the hydro office in the future. Nothing's happening in next year's budget. regards to that.
So none of this is for construction, this is just design, like $1 million.
Well, some of this, depending on where you're at.
It's
So
our first line.
that first
Line has-
hydro office,
Yeah, it has construction in.
that's cost in 23 and 24.
So that's for construction.
Yeah, correct. The first year would be your planning and your design. So, and again, this is just the plan, right, as we look at the 5-year horizon. This is a
These are working numbers.
plan the work the plan, right? That's the plan. So the next one is the powerhouse improvements. Obviously, these are much more critical in terms of the infrastructure that he needs to do. So you can see there, the way this one is set up, so in that first line where it says programmatic, pH improvements total, so that $2.25 million, that's all the projects listed below. So for next year, we're looking at $2.2 million of improvements that need to be done within the hydroelectric facilities with regards to these different components. And some of these, they're broke out into different projects, but they can be completed kind of all at the same time, whether in the same powerhouse, that type of thing.
And is it usually contracted out work, or is it?
It
It's
depends.
all contracted work.
For the most part, yeah.
But it depends, but yeah. I think more important is the next one on the hydro, which is the reservoir and dam work. And what we really want to show here is that you can see in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, we've got a substantial amount of capital that we're going to have to be dealing with. And that's related both to the Scotts Flat spillway upgrades as well as the Combi. Right now, we're in the process with the Combi scour and stability analysis. Once that comes back, we're going to have to be making improvements to the Combi dam as well to meet DSOD and FERC requirements. So those are two big pieces coming up on the horizon that we're going to
Punch in a big hole and put
do.
that pipe directly into the dam?
So part of
Is that part of it?
So part of what we're doing, since they're looking at the stability and the overtopping and the scouring of Combi, we asked them to also look at increasing the size of the penetration in the dam, and to at least think about that in terms of incorporating how they would build their stability and the scouring plan as part of that. So yes, that is,
As one option, and we're not directing them to do that as the option, or are we directing? My question is, are we directing them to?
so in their design work, they will be looking at alternatives of increasing of the size of the dam. Phase 1.
And so that.
Not the where, just the how.
Just the how. How we would do it, how big could it be, what would it look like, where would it go?
No, this,
No.
so we would be replacing the draft tube on the reservoir for the powerhouse.
Yeah, right now it's a 34-inch penetration that comes through the dam before it opens up and goes to the Combi North powerhouse. So as we get closer to our high inflows,
34 inch?
34. So as we get closer to our high inflows, the amount of head that we burn through there, effectively it makes the powerhouse not even worth running. So when we get above, I think it's 160, 170, we actually start to lose generation power because we're just burning up so much head, right? So that's part of the problem, is the fact that we have that small penetration. Also, ultimately, the idea being is that pipeline can be connected to the dam and be under pressure situation, under a pressure conduit. Be able to push more water through the Combi-Ophir system and be less reliant on the Bear River Canal, which has had issues before and is currently not our canal. That's somebody else's facility we just run water through. So it makes sense.
So we have 125 here.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to be able to see if we can, is it feasible to make a larger increase in there versus having to do a tower or some other way to be able to get more water through to the Combi-Ophir system. So that's part of what they're doing, is looking at increasing the penetration to meet a flow requirement.
And this is because we're gonna be releasing moratoriums on Placer County? Is that why?
It just meets our build-out for the pipeline at some point, way in the future.
And push more water through that system, right, versus the Bear River component. Fair River Canal.
Just what feeds Fair River Canal?
That comes right out of Rollins,
Rollins, straight out, oh, the one that comes.
right below
takes the right
Rollins and
turn out
takes
there.
off and runs along the hillside, yeah, correct. That's had failures in the past. So that's what they're doing on that. So those are the two big ones, right? So those are good to at least identify and understand that as we move forward, we need to start planning for how we're gonna handle that. And whether that's trying to rework our capital system program, be able to handle more of that versus bonding it, et cetera, right? That's where Marvin and the GM and the board start to figure out the best way to tackle that. If you try to push all your capital to fix those, we're not gonna be putting anything into what we've got.
But right now, this
Right.
assumes that we're doing it this way.
Yeah.
But now it's just showing it there, correct.
Right now, our directive to staff has been pay go forward. We
Yeah.
have no direction to
Right,
look for alternative financing.
correct.
And we're demonstrating that, or I think we're demonstrating in this plan, that we can execute the project in a timely fashion on a pay go status. So we don't have to debt leverage, right?
And French stand?
Yep.
That's,
It's way, way, way up.
Way up.
So you're at 1,000 plus.
oh,
No hydraulic line
and it's a hydro facility,
Yes.
it's energy on it? I mean,
No,
No,
it's just one of the storage reservoirs above Bowman,
yeah.
A storage, why is FERC driving it then?
because it's part of the FERC project.
It's in the boundary footprint, yeah.
Ah.
All of these are, yeah.
But the water in it flows down through Sawmill, Bowman, goes to the Bowman Powerhouse, comes back across
It's all part of the project, yeah.
Spalding 3, then drops through Spalding 1, 2, then they decide whether it's gonna go to Drummer, right? So it's
Yeah, okay.
part of the greater,
System.
yeah.
Yeah, and part of,
That may actually be built to supply our mine, they help right now.
and up there, what you run into mostly is the constructability of it. Getting access there, you can't just drive concrete trucks and,
Yeah.
And you're paying for helicopters.
yeah, helicopters are very expensive for a lot of handwork,
Spillway training.
very.
Yep.
Lower division, got money in there for, Chicago Park flume intake drain improvements, and then the, Dutch Flat canal liner replacement. He's only got those at the upfront, so he's not anticipating those as, so I don't know if there's any specific questions you have on any of those remaining ones, but you can see on the last page, give you a feel, you can see first the hydro capital, right, 6.2 million, and next year, we got 7, and then it starts to ramp up considerably. And again, that's related to Scotts Flat and Tacombe. And so, when you look at, the last one there, which is the total capital for engineering, hydro, and rec, you'll start to see some serious dollars starting to come up as we move forward.
So the thing is the thing to carry away from this right here is that 6 to 7 million is really what you can do financially for hydroelectric, right? You will have, once you go beyond that 6 to 7, you're now into a place where you have to go find additional money. So here, you can't, in your out years, right now, in this schedule, you cannot go pay-go with it. You have to find financing. And it's something we knew, right? I mean, we've talked about Scotts Flat, and we've talked about Scour. What we haven't really bored into yet is the 3 transformers and the rewind at Chicago Park Powerhouse. So,
Yep.
but,
Right, which are the other components that are in there.
Yeah.
And we'll cover that memo, right, the projects that were contained in that $60 million bond.
okay,
Okay,
all right. We're at 11:05.
Let's see if there's any public comment.
Well, so do we wanna go through, we've got the project
Project status.
Do you wanna do the highlights for us?
Yeah, we can do that.
nobody raised their hand.
Nobody raise their hands? We'll close item, is that 4?
Yeah.
We sure can. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at
10 after?
10 after.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me, Chris?
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we'll go ahead and reconvene the the engineering committee, and we'll go on to item, 5, which is project status.
I did have her hand up. Do you want to confirm if that's for the last item?
Oh,
Was she late on that, or
I don't see it on the screen.
this hand's up?
Sid, your hand was up. Did you have a comment on the last item?
Yeah, it was just a simple one. I hope you can hear me. And that is just to remind everyone to please try to speak up, especially when it gets very conversational. I'm paying close attention and it kind of gets lost. So especially my
Okay.
friend Nick, if you could remember to speak up and project. I've had the most trouble with you. So thank you for understanding.
Yeah, that's fine. It seems like, there are a couple satellite mics. The setup might be better if there are satellite mics on everybody.
We only have two.
Only have two, okay.
Here, we're gonna
Gotcha.
check this out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me better, Sid?
Much better. Thank you so much.
Oh, we just moved that one mic.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
And, we can move the other one. That way I'll pick up Laura better.
okay. Okay, so we'll just hit a couple of items here in, project status. First one I'd like to, talk about is in the pipeline replacement. We've actually added a project, not the match, for tar number 2492, which is Apple on Annex in Olympia. And what this came about was, maintenance has found out that the city is gonna be doing some paving in a section, in an area that we need to be replacing some pipeline. And so, they came to us to see if we could put something together so they can get items, ordered, and so they can do that work. And if we can do that work before the repaving, then we don't have to do any pavement restoration, which saves us a bunch of money. So we did do that. We went out and had it surveyed, put together an alignment real quickly to get them to be able to bid their components. So I think it's roughly $60,000 worth of material. And so they'll go ahead and be able to replace that this year before the city does their paving. So we don't have to pay for any of that restoration work.
Which project was that?
This was a new one, so it's not on this list.
Oh,
And that's why I just wanted to bring it to your attention. It's Apple and Annex and Olympia Way. It's over there off, I guess that's towards, Brunswick that way. So it's kind of tucked back in there, a small little neighborhood back in there. So anyway, just an opportunity for maintenance to jump on it and get some work done and, save us some money by not having to deal with pavement. So we just wanted to add that because that's in the pipeline replacement. That's why I mentioned that. A couple of the highlights, Doty North. Now that we have the document, we'll be moving forward. We have our application into Fish and Wildlife, so hopefully we'll hear from them shortly on what we'll have to do, so we can get that incorporated and then put that into the final bid documents, to get that out once we know whatever mitigation measures we have to do. And again, Santini siphon, we're trying to move forward to see if we can get that constructed this year, if we can get an easement taken care of on a property owner. We've got the design at 50%, so it's pretty much the alignment set at this point. So, South Yuba Canal, we talked about that a little bit, that they're working on that. It's been delayed a little, but we'll be continuing to move forward. E. George to Lake Wildwood. So we sent out the information to, for the easement, for the PRV station. Less than thrilled, I guess, is the answer I'll give in the short term in terms of the offer that was made. So we're in discussions with the church with regards to the need for obtaining an easement.
We're not happy with them, or they're not happy with us.
I think their thought of what the value of the land was a little different than what the number showed.
and is this on the phase one
Yeah,
stretch between?
correct.
It's a tiny, half a mile,
Correct.
there's a church there?
Yeah, the
Almost
mega
all church, the
mega
big
church right there, yeah. Anyway, the PRV station sits on that, and,
At Hope Lane?
let's see, what's the cross street? Is that Hope?
Yeah.
I think that's it. Anyway, it's on church property. We send a package together. We got a value and appraisal. I think their thoughts were a little different than the realities. So we just need to sit down with them and chat with them. We want to make sure we're in the right track and we get this easement taken care of, so that, we don't want to issue a contract and then have right-of-way delays and some of those types of things to have to deal with.
So is the contract, for the bid package out?
No,
No,
it's
not
not.
until we have the,
Not until we have the easements, or at least to a point where we're comfortable being able to release the bid documents.
And do we have a budget, what we were gonna spend on that easement, or is it just whatever they ask for?
no,
No, we can't do that. That's the problem, right? I mean,
so we appraise it, and we figure out what the square footage is, and that's the price, that's what we offer them.
you're talking, you know, $1,000 to $2,000 of a cost. And, yeah, without getting into details, the easement itself is not very expensive.
Okay.
So that's where we're at on that. Phase one, they're building the ramps. They've been drilling holes to install the bypass pipe for the second phase. So they've done most of that. And now they're building the ramps over the existing pipeline, or the new pipeline we installed, and then they'll be installing the bypass later this summer. So, they're wounding down to a much smaller crew at this point, but they are still working out there.
So we'll be red hot and ready to run, let's say, end of irrigation.
Absolutely. And this one will be a 2-day outage because of the tie-in requirements. So we're working with Ops and PG&E to make sure we can get that 2-day outage to do that. So, we've talked about Centennial, Alta Sierra, they're in design. We still start construction in October, but they're moving forward with design on the tank now and starting to put in some of the civil works and the pipeline layouts. And then North Auburn, like I said, we've got the RFPs in, so we're reviewing those currently to get that moved
You
forward.
had mentioned that we were able to go down to a 3 million gallon tank because of some other improvements.
Yeah, Osborne Hill was one of them, right, which is on the CIP program.
Okay, so it's not part of this
Correct.
project?
Correct. It would be a separate one. We looked at whether we could incorporate some of those as part of this whole project and keep a budget that the board had already approved, and the attorneys didn't agree with that basically they're separate projects and needed to be bid out separately, that we couldn't just add other pieces to that one because they were so substantially different than what was bid out. So there'll be separate projects.
Oh, it's already been bid out?
But yeah, your board already approved the,
Oh, and it was bid as a 5?
as a 5, right.
And so we have a contractor?
Contractor to on board, the
On board
design
already.
build to do it for the 5 million, and we've changed it down to the 3, right? But we are hoping we can incorporate some of those other improvements
Yeah.
under the same
I
contract.
understand.
That
Okay,
we can't do.
super, thank you.
Community investment, Iron Horse, they finished up, they, did their chip seal, last week. And so they just need to clean up the gravel and they'll be done with that one. And, Table Meadows, they will be, mobbing on site here too, and they'll start work in July. And that'll be done before October, because it has to be. Because that's when phase one will start back up, and I'll be running big trucks through there, so, there's not much in terms of the hydro stuff. If there's a specific question, I can maybe try to answer it, but most of those are being handled through hydro's folks at this point. Let me try to skip through here.
About the Deer Creek Powerhouse, so cost of upgrades necessary to sell power. So we're actually putting improvements into them
Yes.
right now that we're
Yes.
paying for, and we don't have.
Well, it's on hold,
yet.
right? The status
Yeah.
says it's on hold,
Hold, okay,
so it's not one they're actually moving forward with at the moment.
because it's detours.
So the
Yeah.
projects, well, so we did land, some equipment nearby. We have authorization to come into the powerhouse as part of the PSA so that we can start collecting some rudimentary operational, information from them while they're in operating. So we're watching them.
About a whole bunch of stuff and then sidelining it, not a very efficient way to.
We need to build it, we need to get it ready so that when they're ready, and we don't know when that is, for us to be able
When
to,
was the last time you talked to them? I mean, are we getting closer?
no, we're not close at all. So I talked to their director of hydroelectric strategies, 2 weeks ago, and for
We've hired staff and we've spent all kinds of money, we don't have any idea when we're gonna get it.
we've hired staff and they're working on the flumes and working in the upper country, so that's not a loss. This is hydro staff that's working there to keep an eye on them. And so we're just bringing the necessary equipment. So some of the stuff we've landed, we brought telecoms in, we put an RTU, there so that we can watch them, but we still have a lot of cabinetry that needs to be prepared so that when they change, we can come in, land our cabinets and operate.
And this is driven by this NCAC or something like that, this other,
Right, so our contract with NCPA, with Northern California Power Agency,
and that's their requirement.
that's their requirement. So the powerhouse has to be able to talk to their office and to CAISO all simultaneously so that they can operate the unit. So no orphaned assets there, we're just preparing.
So in terms of the hydro dam and water improvement, we're going to go into closed session regarding Scotts Flat, so have some discussion there, and then
Who's Theodore Blank, and who's, are these new staff?
No,
other hydro.
Ted's one of our electricians, Nathan's our project manager. Daryl is a contract employee that when that contract ends, he'll no longer be here. Phil Nedvid's our maintenance supervisor. So those are all employees, with one exception.
So these electrical drawing consolidations, are they being done by electrical engineers? I mean, is that contract work that's being done? Like on, Combi stuff, electrical upgrades, electrical drawing consolidation and update with Mesa. Okay, so Mesa.
Yeah, so Mesa is
is
an engineering firm.
that they're managing out of hydro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also trying to skip through, so towards the back, get through, hydro, you got, engineering O&M at the bottom, I guess, at page 3. That's the raw water master plan, I believe Greg's gonna be coming to, is it the board or?
The board now, so he's cleared he's on his way to the board in June, end of June.
June the 24th?
Yeah, to bring the outreach.
Yeah. Greg Jones?
For the raw water master plan, the outreach plan that was put together by,
But what about the when are we gonna get a briefing on what they're doing with the raw water master plan? A technical interim briefing of what's going on with it?
well, that's coming. As soon as we have the tech memos are complete, then, we'll be reaching out to the board.
They've been working on it for
A long
over a
time.
year. And we have never had a check-in with what they're doing.
Yeah, we haven't received the drafts, and then the one draft, the H&H, that's been directed by the board to go get the calcium edition, so we're working on preparing the contracts for that, so that we can get it
CWA did, Brad?
buffed up, I guess is the best way to say that.
You're talking about this, localized,
The climate change downscaling.
Correct.
And that's being done by a completely different shop, so we have to extract it out of HDR and then go get Stantec to apply their work on top of it.
You've got the demand model.
So this is
Demand
what
model
we've done
now.
for CalCent. Are they gonna transport that into our red and blue model?
No, so they're gonna, let me say it a little differently. Yes,
Isn't the red and blue model the FERC model?
it is the FERC model. So that's our H&H, that's the mother, right? That's it. That's a HEC-RAS model. And so the calcium model then has to bring nodal information in, if I understand this right, correct me if I'm wrong, but the calcium model, we're not gonna take our data and inject it into the calcium model. What we're gonna do is take the information out of the calcium model and apply it to the nodes inside our red and blue model, and that'll change how the hydrology.
Who's gonna do that work?
Stantec. They have, yeah, so they're the ones that did all the work for PCWA and El Dorado. So, and they're not super communicative, and so we need, I guess the last time I was involved, which is months ago, was the Stantec needs permission from PCWA and the federal government, Bureau of Reclamation, to let us play in that space. And because Bureau of Reclamation has not finalized the data set and needs to go through their chain before they release their data set.
So the calcium's going to inform the red and blue.
Correct. Well, it's gotta change, it's gotta make some nodal changes, it's gotta make some adjustments, right? We did what I think is a pretty fantastic climate change piece of work inside of it, but it is clearly not in the same space, in the same league as this downscaling work that has been done, so we need to capture that inside the model.
But we can't use calcium, because calcium doesn't have the nodal definition that we need anyway.
Correct. But we need to pick up the specific nodes in the upper watershed.
The underlying data.
Yes.
And how long has this been going on? I mean, I'm
Months.
unclear on this, hydrology. So the raw water master plan is due, it's gonna be update is due,
Never.
oh, there's no need to do it. So we just said we're gonna do it. But didn't we do this back in 2013 and 2014? We updated it to?
Oh, we adopted the 2013 plan, yes. So there is a raw water master
So that's the plan we
active.
have right now.
That's our approved document that we
We're
use, that
operating
we
under.
design for
Okay,
master
our
plan
strategic
flows,
plan.
et cetera.
Yes.
That is
So
based
we're
on that
basing
plan,
everything on that.
Yes.
currently, because that is the approved plan.
So the raw water master plan, there are 8 chapters, we adopted chapters 1 through 7.
Correct, which didn't require a
Chapter 8
secret document.
would be the
Capital.
capital plan to go with it, and
Right.
we were gonna do an EIR on
Correct, because that requires the
And
CEQA
that
work.
is going where?
Nowhere.
Still there, but the problem is that we got to the point, Nick, where the planning for the 2013 model, which was done earlier in 2000, I think like 2008.
Or 11 or something.
Well, so the planning began in '08, it carries through to 11, then, you know, I just get here, we adopt 1 through 7, we put 8 on hold, we're ready to go draft. We went draft, we're ready to go draft on chapter 8, we're ready to go draft.
Yeah, but we never did.
We never did. And then climate change and all that other stuff, and then, so Centennial had nothing to do with it. We got into a place where the model was so old that it was no longer fresh enough to carry the capital program forward. We couldn't survive in that space. We didn't have any of the climate change work that needed to be done inside that model. We didn't have the full understanding of what FERC was gonna do, because we didn't have all of that done. So now, well, but we know the 4E conditioning now, so we're comfortable where we're at in terms of saying, this is what it will be. Assuming that Section 7 comes back somewhere inside of a boundary that says, yeah, NID is INI to the Yuba River system. Assuming we're INI, then, and that the Yuba Accord holds, then the hydrology will stand, and the work that we've done so far is accurate. If Section 7 comes back, then even when we're done with the climate change upgrades that we've gone through, you're still gonna have to go back, change your nodes again, and then spit out the model. But at that point, it's just data entry. Our issue right now is the front-end work is done, the HEC model's done, we need to capture CalSim and figuring that relationship out with Stantec so that we can get that information approved by Bureau of Reclamation, comes to us, we put it in the model, Stantec does that for us, and then kicks the model out.
Okay,
That's where we're at.
Bureau of Reclamation needs to approve it, because they developed it.
That's their model.
And we have to use information as for our upcoming urban and ag water management plans, that'll be next year.
Yeah.
Right, so we wanna make sure they all
Right, no.
They all play
they
together.
all have the
Yeah.
same story, right? They need to have that.
They
do.
Novel idea.
But it's a little different process, right? Those are more formalized, with kind of a set of rules on how you're supposed to move forward with the urban.
I don't wanna,
For the raw water.
I understand the process well enough.
Yeah, it's a little more, artistic, or can be.
So I think in one case, the board gets to make choices, that's the raw water master.
Right.
In the urban and the ag, you don't get to make choices,
Just
fill in the
Right,
box.
it's all laid out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the WR knows the information they want, they tell us what it is, and we put it in the box. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. Then, if there's any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, that's great, thank you very much.
Yeah, very, very, very informative.
Very
Thanks for walking through the capital.
Oh, sure.
It's nice to see the detail, because the structure looks similar, but there's a lot of tweaking in the innards.
I'll tell you, there's a lot more to the guts. Yeah.
Is there any public comment on project status? No. Okay, so, that will allow any, public comment on the closed session item. Does anybody have any public comment on the closed session item? When we get done with closed session, we will not be reporting out. There's no reportable action. No reportable action. So, is there any comments on the closed session item?
No hands being
No?
raised.
Okay, so then we'll adjourn and go to closed session.
Thank you very much.